A Rockford man wanted for an April shooting is taken into custody in the state of Washington. Officers in Kent arrested Christian Turner using information provided by the Rockford Police Department.
34-year-old man will spend more than 6 years behind bars for buying and selling cocaine and having weapons in Rockford.
This man, Rogelio Ibarra, pleaded guilty earlier this year to several charges.
7 men are in custody after police bust a drug ring.
Police say the suspects were running a drug enterprise in Rockford. These arrests are the result of a months-long operation by city, state, and federal agencies.
Rockford police say a 20-year-old man was chased by a gunman and ended up dying just across the street. Shot spotter and phone calls led them to this house on Adams Street near Swedish American.
Recovered 2 guns late Friday night. Scope officers arrested Edgar Rodriguez and Victor Gonzalez outside a home on Kent Street near West Street.
10-year-old Corian Hopkins, 20-year-olds Keon Patterson and Messiah Carpenter, and 22-year-old Quandarius Jones were indicted Tuesday by a Peoria County grand jury. 2 16-year-old boys and 4 17-year-old boys were also charged in June.
An after-prom party turned violent. Peoria County Sheriff Chris Watkins says 48 rounds of gunfire were fired at Valley Lake Center in rural Chillicothe around 1 a.m. Sunday morning.
We begin today with breaking news. 6 people are in the hospital after a mass shooting in Peoria.
That's right. Police say the victims include 4 juveniles and 2 adults. A man and juvenile boy have critical injuries.
Was convicted in December of racketeering conspiracy and 2 murders from 2013. As a result, he will serve life plus 10 years in federal prison for his role in the Peoria gang known as the Bomb Squad. Haywood is the first of 13 members of that gang to be sentenced, 12 of which are pictured here. The rest are set for sentencing over the next couple of
Peoria police have arrested a 16-year-old suspect in the of a Bradley College student from Chicago. Freshman Najee Murray was killed early Sunday morning at a house party in Peoria. That's near the campus of Bradley University. More than 100 people were at that party. Police also found a male victim in the home.
Police suspect a 13-year-old boy shot and killed Aguilar. The 32-year-old was visiting family in Little Village when prosecutors say he became the innocent victim of a drive-by shooting. Now sources tell WGN that police think a 13-year-old boy fired that fatal shot. A police spokesman says detectives presented their case to prosecutors who have asked them to gather more evidence before charges are filed. Yesterday, 19-year-old Armando Lopez faced a judge. He's charged and accused of being the one behind the wheel during that.
Bullets in the Chatham neighborhood on the city's south side. This comes just 24 hours after another child, 6-year-old Aaliyah Shell, was shot while playing on the front porch of her Little Village home.
We can't not lose another child to gun violence. Unfortunate, if they stay silent, this is going to continue to happen.
Chicago's top cop says a simmering feud among rival gangs led to the mass shooting in the city's Back of the Yards neighborhood. 1 person was there and 4 people wounded when gunfire rang out at 48th and Ada yesterday afternoon. Today, Superintendent David Brown pointed the finger at suspected gang leader Sergio Barron for the increase in violence.
In April, Melina's daughter, 9-year-old Ariana, was killed in a mass shooting.
She was everything to me. She was my little princess. I just don't see how she's not here. Like, that's so hard for me.
Now, a Chicago man has been charged with 1 count of first-degree and 10 counts of attempted.
He was there like nothing. Like, he didn't care about what he did. Like, he was just there.
10-year-old Angel Gomez, a documented gang member, who's charged with 2 counts of attempted and 2 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm. Investigators say Gomez drove the van carrying the person who opened fire on the plainclothes tactical officers. You see that vehicle right there, using a military-style semi-automatic rifle.
Just learned Chicago police have charged a 17-year-old suspect in the shooting death of a 14-year-old girl back on June 2nd.
Chicago is Fernando Della Torre, and he's a member of the Insane Deuce street gang in Aurora. If he looks a little nervous, it's because at this moment he's got 2 hot handguns in a plastic bag, including a 9mm gun used in a murder. Della Torre's plan, as caught on this undercover videotape, is to throw them into the Fox River. Gang member Orlando Rivera can be heard explaining why.
There's no way once you throw it in the water, there's no way they can recover the fingerprints.
You don't see Rivera on camera because he's working with police, helping with the recording. Rivera takes both weapons from Delatorre, but instead of tossing them into the river, hides them on the bank, where police later recover them and trace them back to 2 unsolved shootings.
Just 40 miles west of Chicago, Aurora, Illinois is a small city with a vibrant economy. New housing developments and businesses, including a floating casino moored along the Riverwalk downtown, all seem to promise a bright future. Gangs have arrived here in the heartland, and a few hundred armed, drug-dealing youths are ripping apart this proud, frightened community. 8 major gangs are waging war in the streets of Aurora. I see my lawyer. Defending their hoods, gang signs, and honor.
When you say Joliet, it's Joliet. That's the man. This ain't shit jolly about it. This bitch Jolly Rack.
Welcome to Jolly Rack.
So real one birthday, we outside, man. We're live in the trenches, boy.
Birthday, eat out.
God.
You out here doing 10-year crimes and you ain't no 10-year nigga. Folks, do some small shit. Do shit for the time that you know you can do. If you a 2-year nigga, do a 2-year crime.
If I knew what I knew now, I would have never been in the street. You know what I mean? Dead brothers I got, boy, I'm from Motown. First shit I'm exposed to is street shit. So of course I want to be a street nigga growing up. We pushing positivity and love, brother, for sure.
Stop playing with us, that's how I get. This my shit. You come over here and we gon' f your good ass up. DuPage, M Block be chasing that shit, folks. Daddy got my brother name and they mouth hot and do you. We can do it however you want to. 1, 2, 3, get to blitz. 5, 5, 6, overspitting the coast niggas, some bitches and every nigga that's with them. That coast nigga, we know you told on your homie. We know you told on your homie, man. You know how the f you coming, man.
Glicky, hold my soul.
This Mike. Wait, oh, fuck Mike. Oh, right here, look. Well, outside right now, finna pull up on us.
Ain't no good. Been through this bit for 10 minutes.
Come on, some money on there. We break it down, Jolly Rack for real, for real. You know what I'm saying? Free bass, free spank, free 30. This the ugly corner. This where it get ugly. Low leg X-Man, that's my big brother. Y'all know that.
Big bro. You know what I'm saying? Y'all speak on him. Y'all see what happened last time.
Joliet announcing a major operation to get dangerous suspects off the streets.
It's called Operation Street Sweeper. Police arrested a total of 21 people in a single day.
At least 12 people shot, 2 of them now dead. The shooting occurred at a Halloween party in the backyard of a home along Jackson Street in Joliet Township around midnight.
I seen people in costumes and stuff like that, but that's what I seen. I'm like, what's going on out here? It's kind of unusual. So there was a party last night.
Police say a patrol sergeant heard a dozen gunshots, and once closer to the area, people were seen running for their life.
Brandon Pichardo, Damian Gonzalez, Arubel Martinez, and Efren Garcia all appeared in court today. Police say they approached 2 people who were parked in a driveway and they opened fire.
The death of a West Chicago man has now been ruled a homicide. Alexander Nicholas's body was found in the 600 block of East Forest Avenue.
Jason Brown is the leader of the AHK street gang. Prosecutors say this is him giving $500 to a man he thought would wire the money to an ISIS soldier. That man was really an informant for the feds.
Illinois has long been at the center of America's gang landscape, with Chicago serving as the birthplace or stronghold of some of the nation's most notorious street organizations. But gang violence isn't confined to Chicago alone. From Rockford and Aurora to Joliet, Peoria, DuPage County, and neighborhoods like Little Village and Back of the Yards, law enforcement agencies have spent decades investigating violent crews accused of shootings, drug trafficking, armed robberies, gun-running operations, and organized criminal enterprises. Through federal indictments, state prosecutions, RICO investigations, and coordinated task force operations, authorities have launched some of the largest gang crackdowns in Illinois history. In this video, we examine the major arrests, the investigations behind them, and the stories that reveal how organized street gangs have shaped communities across the Prairie State.
6-year-old Aaliyah Shell was shot and while playing on the front porch of her little village home.
We can't not lose another child to gun violence. Unfortunate, if they stay silent, this is going to continue to happen.
Community activist Andrew Holmes says residents must speak up and give police information. Holmes often spends his weekends at crime scenes. He attributes much of the violence to gang activity involving retaliation. 18-year-old Juan Barraza and a 16-year-old boy were charged with Aaliyah Shell's murder. Police say both teens are affiliated with gangs.
Retaliation needs to be left in the hands of the Chicago Police Department. If they work with the Chicago Police Department and identify the shooters, that's all we need.
Juan Barraza drove up to the Little Village home and opened fire in March of 2012. They struck 6-year-old Aaliyah Shell in front of her family. Both were sentenced to more than 50 years behind bars.
On March 17, 2012, a warm Saturday afternoon in Chicago's Little Village neighborhood turned into tragedy when 6-year-old Aaliyah Shell was gunned down while sitting on her family's front porch. Leah, a kindergartner who loved the color purple, was enjoying the day with her mother and younger siblings. She had no connection to gangs, no ties to the streets. She was simply an innocent child caught in the middle of a long-running gang war that plagued the neighborhood. According to prosecutors, Juan Barraza and Luis Hernandez, both members of the Latin Kings, set out that afternoon with a deadly mission to delete a rival from the 2-6 Street gang. Hernandez later admitted to authorities that he was targeting rival members, boasting about being a 2-6K. The two men drove a pickup truck through the 3100 block of South Springfield Avenue. As they approached Aaliyah's home, Hernandez leaned out of the passenger window, raised a gun, and shouted gang taunts. TSK, short for 2-6K. What's up, bro? Then, in a hail of bullets, Hernandez fired into the porch. But instead of hitting his intended target, the shot struck Aaliyah. She was hit multiple times in the abdomen. Her mother frantically rushed her to safety, but the little girl died shortly after at Mount Sinai Medical Center. What makes this case even more horrifying is Hernandez's chilling confession. He admitted that he saw Aaliyah and another small child on the porch before opening fire, yet he pulled the trigger anyway. The shooting shocked the Little Village community, already weary of relentless gang violence. At Aaliyah's funeral, hundreds gathered, many wearing purple, her favorite color, as a symbol of remembrance and unity. It would take years before justice was served. In 2022, a decade after the crime, both Barraza and Hernandez were convicted for Aaliyah's death. During the trial, Aaliyah's family and childhood friends filled the courtroom, also wearing purple shirts to honor her memory. Prosecutors highlighted not only the brutality of the act, but also the heartlessness of Hernandez's own admission that he knowingly fired at a porch where children were sitting. The jury found Juan Barraza guilty, while Judge Stanley Sachs separately convicted Luis Hernandez, sealing the fate of both men for their roles in the demise.
CBS 2 News starts right now with breaking news.
And that breaking news, a nurse. He was on his way from his sister's house and tried to save his own life after being shot last night when he was outside his sister's home. And we'll bring you more information as we
Police suspect a 13-year-old boy pulled the trigger in that deadly shooting.
WGN first reported this morning that police suspect a 13-year-old boy shot in Aguilar. The 32-year-old was visiting family in Little Village when prosecutors say he became the innocent victim of a drive-by shooting. Now sources tell WGN that police think a 13-year-old boy fired that fatal shot. A police spokesman says detectives presented their case to prosecutors who have asked them to gather more evidence before charges are filed. Yesterday, 19-year-old Armando Lopez faced a judge. He's charged with accused of being the one behind the wheel during that drive-by shooting. Family members say they've known the 13-year-old may have been involved since the first week of Frank's murder. While it pains them, they still want justice.
A 19-year-old has been charged in the drive-by demise of a nurse in Little Village last month. Armando Lopez faces one count of first-degree deletion in the November 12th slaying of Frank Aguilar. a registered nurse who was gunned down as he returned home in the 3700 block of West 32nd Street after doing laundry. Chicago police said the case shocked the neighborhood. Here was a man working hard to get ahead in life, Captain Gil Calderon told reporters. Unfortunately, that promising life was cut short when gang violence robbed Chicago of another person with a bright future. Investigators initially recovered only 2 shell casings and had no eyewitnesses. Detectives later obtained private security footage that captured the shooting and showed a dark Jeep Commander but no license plate. Days after the attack, officers located a similar vehicle allegedly driven by Lopez, who reportedly fled before being stopped and taken into custody. Police believe Lopez was the driver and say they feel very strongly they have identified the gunman, who remains at large as prosecutors and detectives work to strengthen the case for charges. Authorities have not established a definitive motive, but Deputy Chief Brendan Deenihan said the shooting appears to be a case of mistaken identity amid rival gang tensions. Lopez was denied bond during a court appearance Thursday. Aguilar, who graduated with honors from Malcolm X College and St. Xavier University and worked at Misericordia Home, is remembered by family as selfless and compassionate.
I lost my princess. She was the reason why I got up every morning.
Heartbreaking words from the mother of 8-year-old Melissa Ortega, read by the family's pastor. The case capturing national attention. And today, police announced 2 arrests in the case.
The gunfire, the result of an apparent gang shooting, and now a 16-year-old and another man are charged with. The teen's name is not being released. Investigators used surveillance video to track down the car used in the shooting. That car was found Monday with the gun that police say was used to kill Ortega still inside.
2 people have been charged in the demise of 8-year-old Melissa Ortega, who was fatally shot Saturday in Little Village. Chicago police said a 16-year-old suspected gunman and the alleged getaway driver, identified as Xavier Guzman, were taken into custody in separate arrests. At a news conference, Superintendent David Brown said he informed Melissa's mother that investigators had identified those responsible. Through tears, Melissa's mother addressed the gunman directly, saying their family came to the United States seeking the American dream. Melissa was walking with her mother near 26th Street and Pulaski Road when a shooter emerged from an alley and opened fire on an intended target, a reputed gang member. A volley of rounds struck Melissa twice in the head and wounded the man in the back. Officers responding to a ShotSpotter alert found Melissa at the intersection. She was rushed to Stroger Hospital and pronounced dead less than 2 hours later. The wounded man, who has multiple prior arrests and 2 felony convictions, was taken to Mount Sinai Hospital in critical condition. Investigators later stopped a Toyota Camry believed to be the getaway vehicle. Police said Guzman was behind the wheel and a loaded gun was recovered from the driver's side door. Ballistic testing matched the weapon to shell casings and bullets from the scene. 2 alleged members of the Satan Disciples street gang have been ordered held without bail in the demise of David Lopez in Little Village, prosecutors said. David Chavez and Xavier Encarnacion each face 1 count of first-degree deletion in connection with the shooting in an alley in the 2800 block of West 23rd Street. According to prosecutors, surveillance video shows Chavez and Encarnacion walking with 2 other men from Satan Disciples territory into Latin Kings territory, where they approached Lopez as he stood behind a retractable steel gate in a backyard. Prosecutors said Chavez lured Lopez to the gate by asking for a cigarette while Encarnacion flashed Latin Kings hand signs and addressed Lopez as King, even attempting a King handshake. When another man tried to shake Lopez's hand, an exchange followed. Encarnacion allegedly reached through the gate and shoved Lopez, and the other man then opened fire, striking Lopez in the face and several more times in the chest after he fell, authorities said. Chavez and the gunman fled into a nearby gangway in the 2600 block of West 23rd Place, according to prosecutors. An officer who saw the pair run into a residence identified them as suspects after hearing radio descriptions, prompting a brief standoff that ended with Chavez's arrest when he attempted to escape through an alley. Encarnacion was arrested Monday after investigators matched him through video and other evidence, prosecutors said. Portions of the shooting footage briefly circulated on social media Sunday night before being removed. Chicago's Little Village neighborhood was once again shaken by gang violence when two young men allegedly targeted a rival in a brazen attack that left innocent children injured. On a Monday afternoon around noon, a family had pulled into the MC Donald's drive-thru at 2612 South Kedzie Avenue. Inside the minivan were two parents in the front seats and three children in the back. Prosecutors say Jonathan Gonzalez and Luis Olvera, both documented members of the Latin Kings, spotted the children's father in the passenger seat. The 26-year-old man, who prosecutors identified as a member of a rival gang, became the target of their rage. Gonzalez and an accomplice who has not yet been charged approached the vehicle, shouting "King Love" and insults meant to provoke the father. But the man refused to engage, not wanting to escalate the situation with his children sitting just feet away. That restraint didn't stop the attack. Prosecutors allege Gonzalez walked to a nearby fire hydrant, removed its heavy metal caps, and hurled them into the family's minivan. The caps shattered the rear window, sending shards of glass flying into the children's faces. As the terrified mother tried to drive away, she reportedly yelled out that there were babies in the car. Instead of backing off, Gonzalez responded with profanity, shouting, "FUB," before launching another cap. At that moment, Luis Olvera joined the attack, prosecutors said, throwing rocks at the van to add to the chaos. The family sped away from the drive-thru and quickly flagged down an ambulance. Paramedics treated the injured children, the toddler for multiple facial cuts and bruising, and the infant for lacerations caused by the broken glass. Thankfully, both children survived their injuries. Meanwhile, police swarmed the area and soon found Gonzalez and Olvera hiding in a gangway. Judge Peggy Chiampas, visibly angry, scolded the young defendants. "Hiding in a gangway now, but you went up to a car in a MC Donald's drive-thru, allegedly at noon." The charges reflect the seriousness of the attack. Gonzalez, who prosecutors say is already on juvenile parole for robbery, was charged with aggravated battery to a child and criminal damage to property. One of the most tragic examples came on January 25, 2016, when David Casper Martinez, a reputed member of the 2-6 gang, was gunned down in broad daylight. His teenage friend, also targeted, survived but was left scarred by the attack. According to Cook County prosecutors, the shooting unfolded just after 5 in the 3000 block of South Kedzie Avenue. Martinez and a 17-year-old boy were walking together when they crossed paths with a car carrying Lamar Baker, a known Latin Kings member, and two companions. Both sides instantly recognized each other as rivals, and gang signs were exchanged in the street, a silent but powerful spark that ignited the deadly confrontation. Instead of leaving the area, Baker and his crew circled the block and pulled into a nearby alley. Prosecutors say Baker got out of the car, crouched behind some bushes at the alley's edge, and lay in wait for Martinez and his friend to pass. When the two young men approached, Baker jumped out, pointed his gun, and demanded, "What you want?" Martinez and the 17-year-old tried to run, but Baker opened fire. Martinez was struck in the back of the head and collapsed, mortally wounded. His friend, glancing back, saw Martinez bleeding on the pavement before sprinting toward a nearby fire station for help. As the teen ran, Baker fired several more rounds, striking him in the back. Despite his injuries, he managed to reach the fire station, where firefighters rushed him to Mount Sinai Hospital. His condition was later stabilized, though the physical and emotional scars remain. Martinez, a lifelong Little Village resident, was pronounced dead at the scene. Known in the neighborhood by his nickname Casper, his death devastated family and friends, another young life lost to the gang wars that have long gripped the community. For more than a year, the case remained unsolved. Then, in July 2016, Baker allegedly admitted to a police officer that he had shot someone nicknamed Casper because Martinez was a rival gang member. That statement, along with witness testimony and evidence, led prosecutors to charge him with first-degree deletion for Martinez's death and attempted first-degree deletion for the shooting of the teenage boy. Two alleged members of the Satan Disciples street gang have been ordered held without bail in the demise of David Lopez in Little Village, prosecutors said. David Chavez and Xavier Encarnacion each face one count of first-degree deletion in connection with the shooting in an alley in the 2800 block of West 23rd Street. According to prosecutors, surveillance video shows Chavez and Encarnacion walking with two other men from Satan Disciples territory into Latin Kings territory, where they approached Lopez as he stood behind a retractable steel gate in a backyard. Prosecutors said Chavez lured Lopez to the gate by asking for a cigarette while Encarnacion flashed Latin King's hand signs and addressed Lopez as King, even attempting a King handshake. When another man tried to shake Lopez's hand, an exchange followed. Encarnacion allegedly reached through the gate and shoved Lopez, and the other man then opened fire, striking Lopez in the face and several more times in the chest after he fell, authorities said. Chavez and the gunman fled into a nearby gangway in the 2600 block of West 23rd Place, according to prosecutors. An officer who saw the pair run into a residence identified them as suspects after hearing radio descriptions, prompting a brief standoff that ended with Chavez's arrest when he attempted to escape through an alley. Encarnacion was arrested Monday after investigators matched him through video and other evidence, prosecutors said. Portions of the shooting footage briefly circulated on social media Sunday night before being removed. Juan Crow Amaya, the Latin King-S regional for the 26th Street Little Village region, was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Prosecutors said that in 2008 he effectively commanded more than 1,000 members, enforcing rules that drove armed weekend bust-outs, retaliatory shootings, and the disposal of murder weapons. At sentencing, the court also found him responsible for conspiracy to commit murder. Evidence included undercover recordings of drug sales and testimony from former members. He must serve at least 85% of the term, and his convictions were upheld by the 7th Circuit in 2016. The case capped a broader federal campaign against the 26th Street hierarchy that also put national leader Agustin Corona Zambrano and Supreme Regional Inca Vicente DK Garcia 40 years behind bars, while cooperating Cicero section leader Needle Issa received nearly 17 years. Chicago's Little Village neighborhood has long been a flashpoint for violent gang activity, and in early 2024, prosecutors say a young man with a violent record once again brought gunfire to its streets. On January 1, 2024, just hours into the new year, Angelo Velez allegedly tried to delete another man in the 3000 block of South Kildare Avenue. According to prosecutors, the victim was sitting in a car outside his home when Velez pulled up alongside him in a 2015 Kia Soul with several passengers inside. Witnesses reported that Velez shouted at the man, through gang signs, and then opened fire with a gold handgun. The victim was struck multiple times in the chest, arm, neck, and chin, leaving him critically wounded. Miraculously, he survived the attack. Police quickly launched a search for the shooter, and not long after, Cicero officers spotted the Kia Soul linked to the crime. They pulled the vehicle over and found Velez behind the wheel. Inside, investigators recovered the gold handgun prosecutors say was used in the shooting. Two passengers who had been with Velez at the time identified him as the gunman, strengthening the case against him. Velez was charged with attempted deletion, and Cook County Judge Susana Ortiz ordered him detained, citing his gang affiliation and violent history as clear threats to public safety. What makes this case even more troubling is Velez's recent criminal record. On August 31, 2022, he was arrested after allegedly headbutting a Chicago police officer in the face as officers tried to arrest him for throwing bricks at a Chicago Water Department truck. Less than 2 weeks later, police arrested him again, this time for allegedly possessing a firearm. Yet despite these arrests, the consequences were minimal. On October 5, 2023, prosecutors dropped the firearm case on the same day Velez pleaded guilty to the battery of a peace officer. Judge Maria Curiaco Cecil sentenced him to 24 months of probation and 50 hours of community service instead of prison time. Just 3 months later, Velez was accused of opening fire on New Year's Day, nearly deleting another man. Now, Velez faces attempted deletion charges that could carry decades in prison if he is convicted. In late February 2021, a confrontation in Chicago's Lawn neighborhood turned deadly over something as simple but symbolically dangerous as a haircut. 16-year-old Julian Castillo, a known member of the 2-6 gang, was visiting a friend in the 6300 block of South Richmond Street when he was confronted by rivals. Prosecutors say Sergio Rodriguez, a 20-year-old Latin king, noticed a man's haircut and accused it of being 2-6 style. Rodriguez began questioning Castillo about his affiliation, and when the teenager confirmed he was indeed 2-6, Rodriguez punched him repeatedly while shouting about his hatred for the gang and blaming them for the death of his friend. Castillo tried to run for his life, bolting out of the house and down the street. But another Latin king, 21-year-old Jesus Moro, gave chase. Moro pursued him for more than a block before pulling out a handgun and opening fire. Castillo collapsed after being struck several times and was later pronounced dead at Christ Medical Center in Oak Lawn. The brazen attack, prosecutors revealed, was captured on surveillance video. Even after the shooting, the violence did not stop. Witnesses say Moro returned to the house laughing, still holding the weapon. Meanwhile, Rodriguez ran to the victim and punched him again as he struggled to get up, before hiding in the trunk of a Chevy Malibu parked nearby. Police arrested Moro inside the residence and found Rodriguez in the car trunk. The gun used in Castillo's demise was also recovered. The case quickly drew outrage when it was revealed that Moro should not have been free at all. Just months earlier, in July 2020, Chicago police cameras recorded him firing a handgun outside John Spry Elementary School in Little Village. He was arrested and initially held on $100,000 bail, but Judge Leroy Martin Jr. later cut that in half, allowing Moro to go home after posting just a $5,000 deposit bond. Moro already had a history of similar offenses, including a 2017 case where he fired at a passing car near the same school. In both incidents, he admitted to police that he had been testing his gun. Rodriguez, too, was no stranger to the courts. He previously served an 18-month prison sentence for reckless discharge of a firearm in 2019. Both men were charged with first-degree murder for Castillo's death, and both were ordered held without bail following their arrests. The case highlighted a grim reality in Chicago's ongoing struggle with gangs, guns, and bail reform. Morrow was the 8th person in the city that year to kill or shoot someone while out on bail for another serious felony. Prosecutors pointed to the case as an example of how dangerous offenders continue to threaten neighborhoods when allowed back on the streets. For the family of Julian Castillo, a haircut became the flashpoint for a tragedy that exposed not only the deadly rivalries between gangs like the Latin Kings and Two-Six, but also the flaws in a system meant to protect the community from repeat violence. A 27-year-old man was wounded in a drive-by shooting in Little Village on Chicago's southwest side, according to police. The victim was standing in the 2600 block of West 23rd Place when someone in a white Honda opened fire before fleeing the scene. He was struck in the knee and taken to Mount Sinai Hospital, where he was listed in good condition. Moments after the attack, responding officers stopped the vehicle and arrested 3 suspects in the 7400 block of South Parnell Avenue. Police identified them as 18-year-old Stephen Montano, 22-year-old Rodrigo Ramirez, and a 15-year-old boy. Investigators believe the white Honda was involved in the shooting. Charges were approved soon after the arrests. The juvenile faces felony counts of aggravated battery with a firearm and aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. Ramirez faces felony counts of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon and fleeing or attempting to elude police. Montano was charged with a misdemeanor count of resisting a peace officer. All 3 were scheduled to appear in bond court Saturday afternoon, and the investigation remains active. 2 19-year-olds have been charged in the Jan 26th demise of 15-year-old Miguel Navarrete in Little Village, authorities said. Martin Miranda, of the 2500 block of South Trumbull Avenue, and Andres Guerra, of the 2700 block of South Lombard Avenue in Cicero, each face 1 count of first-degree deletion. Prosecutors said Navarrete was standing near a car in the 4100 block of West 30th Street when a dark-colored SUV pulled up. Witnesses identified Guerra as the driver, who rolled down his window and shouted "Two-Six," a reference to a neighborhood gang. When Navarrete replied, a backseat passenger identified by witnesses as Miranda opened the door, produced a sawed-off shotgun, and shot Navarrete. Miranda then allegedly pointed the weapon toward 2 adults and 2 children, ages 3 and 7, seated in a nearby car, before turning back and firing 2 more shots at the teen, prosecutors said. Navarrete, of the 2800 block of South Karlov Avenue, was pronounced dead at the scene. A police source said Navarrete and the 2 suspects belonged to rival gangs. According to prosecutors and police reports, Miranda identified himself as a Latin Kings member and told investigators the shooting was retaliation for the killing of another Latin King. After the gunfire, Guerra sped away and struck a pedestrian with the SUV, prosecutors said. Witnesses later identified both Guerra and Miranda, who were taken into custody this week. Miranda, nicknamed Scrappy in police reports, appeared in bond court Thursday wearing a Cubs sweatshirt and khaki pants. Judge Adam Bourgeois Jr. ordered him held without bail. Guerra appeared Wednesday and was ordered held on $1 million bond. A 19-year-old man nicknamed Sniper was ordered held without bail after prosecutors said he shot a father in front of the man's 20-month-old daughter during a gang initiation in Little Village. Esteban Sotelo is charged with attempted deletion, aggravated battery with discharge of a firearm, and unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. According to Assistant State's Attorney Heather Kent, Sotelo and a 14-year-old accomplice agreed to target a rival Satan Disciples member as part of the juvenile's initiation into the Latin Kings. In the 2700 block of West 24th Street, The 29-year-old victim was loading his toddler into a car seat when Sotelo approached, asked, "What's up?" and then opened fire. The father turned to shield his child before being shot 6 times in the legs, back, and neck. He was taken to Mount Sinai Hospital and remained in intensive care Sunday with a bullet lodged in the nasal cavity below his eye. No one else was hurt. Police arrested Sotelo and the juvenile shortly after the shooting. Prosecutors said multiple witnesses identified Sotelo as the gunman, and Sotelo allegedly admitted the shooting to police and an assistant state's attorney, further stating he stashed the revolver in a bag of mulch where officers later recovered it. Court records note Sotelo is on probation for a prior narcotics conviction. He is listed in documents as an admitted gang member. The 14-year-old was charged in juvenile court with aggravated battery discharge of a firearm. Judge James Brown ordered Sotelo of the 2100 block of South Fairfield Avenue held without bail pending further proceedings. All defendants are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. A chaotic confrontation in Little Village left 8 Chicago police officers injured and 11 people facing charges after officers moved to disperse a large crowd in the 2500 block of South Albany Avenue. As police worked to clear the street, one officer was pinned between vehicles when a driver allegedly accelerated toward officers, prompting an officer to fire. No one was struck by gunfire. In the melee that followed, 8 officers were hurt, including one who suffered a broken hand and another struck in the face by a glass bottle before the scene was brought under control. 6 juveniles and 5 adults were taken into custody. 3 of the juveniles were 14, with charges ranging from aggravated battery to a police officer to resisting arrest and reckless conduct, according to reports.
Chicago's Back of the Yards neighborhood, once the beating heart of the city's industrial might, grew up in the shadows of the Union stockyards, a place where immigrant families carved out new lives amid the smoke, grit, and blood of the meatpacking empire. From the early 1900s through the mid-century, it was a working-class stronghold filled with Polish, Irish, Mexican, and Lithuanian laborers who built communities block by block. But when the stockyards closed in 1971, jobs vanished, and the vacuum left behind gave rise to something darker. By the 1980s, the same tight alleys and brick flats that once echoed with factory whistles became battlegrounds for street gangs, first the Almighty Saints, then rivals like the Two-Six, Latin Kings, Party People, and later Black Pea Stones, Four Corner Hustlers, and Satan Disciples. Generations of turf wars have marked this area, transforming it into one of the city's most persistent gang hot zones. Today, Back of the Yard stands at a crossroads, a place where neighborhood renewal and violent legacy coexist. From the mass shootings that have scarred families to the federal takedowns that reshaped gang hierarchies, every arrest and every operation is part of the same ongoing struggle to reclaim the streets from the violence that has haunted them for decades.
Sergio Barron for the increase in violence. Brown says just days after Barron was released from federal custody in March, he was picked up by Chicago police on a weapons charge, but he was then let out on a $1,000 cash bond. In April, his brother and police say Barron has fueled the escalating gang war. Police are now calling for prosecutors to get Barron off the streets.
We are in conversations now with the U.S. Attorney's Office as well as State's Attorney's Office on, number one, trying to figure out how we can revoke his bond, get him back, this high-ranking gang member that's driving this violence because of retaliation for his brother. Try to get him off the street.
20-year-old Mario Sanders is facing aggravated battery and resisting arrest charges. Police say that Sanders pushed an officer to the ground and punched another in the face. Police tell us a second man tried to stop officers from providing medical treatment for the shooting victims.
In March 2024, a deadly mass shooting rocked Chicago's Back of the Yards neighborhood, leaving 1 man dead and 4 others wounded in what police described as a violent feud between rival gangs. The attack occurred near 48th Street and Aurora, when multiple gunmen opened fire during a street confrontation. A 19-year-old man met his demise at the scene, while two other victims, ages 16 and 18, were critically injured. Another pair, also 16 and 18, suffered gunshot wounds, but were listed in stable condition. Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown attributed the surge in violence to an escalating gang war led by suspected gang leader Sergio Barron. According to Brown, Barron had only recently been released from federal custody and was rearrested by Chicago police on a weapons charge in March. He was released again on a $1,000 bond, a decision Brown publicly criticized, claiming that Barron's freedom had reignited retaliatory shootings following the demise of his brother just weeks later. Brown stated that the Chicago Police Department was in active discussions with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office to have Barron's bond revoked and return him to custody. During the chaotic aftermath of the shooting, police officers attempting to secure the scene were attacked by two alleged gang members. Mario Sanders was arrested and charged with aggravated battery and resisting arrest after allegedly pushing an officer to the ground and punching another in the face. Police said these confrontations underscored the level of hostility and lawlessness that has gripped parts of the back of the yard's community.
A 17-year-old suspect in the shooting death of a 14-year-old girl back on June 2nd. That shooting happened on the 1700 block of West 48th Street. The victim was shot in the head. The suspect was taken into custody last night.
Back of the yard shooting. Suspect charged in shooting death of 14-year-old girl. In early June 2024, a shooting in Chicago's back of the yards took the life of 14-year-old Savannah Quintero, a 7th grader who, according to police and community leaders, was caught in the crossfire of a neighborhood gang feud she wasn't part of. Around 6 p.m., near the 1700 block of West 48th Street, Savannah and her boyfriend had just left a corner store when 3 young males confronted them and asked about gang affiliation. After Savannah said she wasn't in a gang, the group chased her and opened fire. 2 rounds were fired by at least 1 gunman, and Savannah was struck in the head. She underwent emergency surgery at Comer Children's Hospital, but died days later. Investigators recovered surveillance video showing suspects fleeing, and community sources told officials the conflict likely involved rivalries between the long-entrenched Almighty Saints and a newer crew referred to locally as the Party People, which had been recruiting teens from nearby schools. Chicago police later announced the arrest of a 17-year-old, identified as the person who fired the gun, taken into custody in the 3700 block of West 59th Street, and charged in connection with the demise.
Good evening, Jim and Mai. Police say it's 1 down and 1 to go. Now that they've made 1 arrest, police are now looking for the shooter. The alleged driver, 18-year-old Angel Gomez, a documented gang member who's charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 2 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm. Investigators say Gomez drove the van carrying the person who opened fire on the plainclothes tactical officers. You see that vehicle right there, using a military-style semi-automatic rifle. Those 2 9th District officers were conducting a follow-up investigation near 43rd and Ashland in the back of the yards last week. Police say members of Gomez's gang opened up during questioning, leading them to Gomez.
In May 2017, a violent case of mistaken identity nearly claimed the lives of 2 Chicago police officers and reignited citywide outrage over gang violence targeting law enforcement. On May 2nd, officers from the Deering District were conducting surveillance in the area of Halstead Street and Archer Avenue, following reports of a gang-related shooting. The plainclothes officers, driving an unmarked black police van, were trailing a Nissan Murano and a red van believed to be involved in earlier gunfire. Unknown to them, members of the La Raza street gang, who mistook the police for rivals, mobilized to intercept them. According to prosecutors, Angel Gomez was behind the wheel of a Chrysler Town and Country minivan when his accomplice opened the sliding side door and unleashed at least 25 rounds from a .223 caliber assault rifle toward the officer's van near 34th Street. The barrage struck both officers 1 hit in the hip, arm, and flank, the other in the back before the police vehicle's gas tank was punctured by bullets, forcing it to stall. Despite their injuries, the officers returned fire through the windshield, hitting one of the minivan's tires. Gomez and his passenger abandoned the vehicle, stashing the rifle near nearby railroad tracks before fleeing on foot. The weapon was later recovered by police K-9 units. Gomez, identified through witnesses and surveillance evidence, was captured soon after and charged with 2 counts of attempted first-degree deletion, aggravated battery with a firearm, and related weapons charges. Authorities say his accomplice, the gunman, remains at large. Prosecutors linked both men to the La Raza gang, which was feuding at the time with the Latin Saints and 2X gangs in the back of the yards area. The shooting, they said, was a tragic byproduct of gang paranoia and false identification, as Gomez's crew mistook the officer's unmarked van for that of rivals.
10 people were injured, including 3 other children and Molina's wife, who was shot in the back.
Now she's doing way better.
Molina says his nephews were just released from the hospital last week.
Both of them, I saw them yesterday. They're doing really good, really better. But like the doctors say, their life is not going to be normal ever.
Now, a Chicago man has been charged with 1 count of first-degree and 10 counts of attempted.
He was there like nothing, like he didn't care about what he did, like he was just there.
39-year-old Octaviano Romero had his first court hearing Monday. Molina says yesterday was a blur because this was the first time he saw the person who was accused of killing his daughter.
I was so mad. I just want to beat him up, but like I said, I gotta let the justice do their job.
In the back of the yards mass shooting on April 13th, Chicago police say a family birthday gathering in the 2000 block of West 52nd Street was ambushed by attackers armed with an assault-style rifle and handguns. Investigators recovered roughly 75 shell casings scattered across the block after bursts of rapid fire tore through the crowd. 11 people were shot. The youngest victim, 9-year-old Ariana Molina, was struck in the head and died shortly after arriving at Comer Children's Hospital. 3 other children were wounded: an infant, about 1 year old, and an 8-year-old, both hit in the abdomen and initially listed in critical condition, and a 9-year-old grazed in the hand, along with 7 adults who sustained gunshot injuries of varying severity. Detectives later announced the arrest of Octaviano Romero and charged him with the first-degree demise in Ariana's demise and 10 counts of attempted deletion for the additional victims. According to police, Romero was identified as one of the shooters. The investigation has focused on the likelihood that multiple gunmen were involved.
The man is facing charges right now, accused of shooting and killing 2 teenage boys in a drive-by. That shooting happened last August near 48th and Winchester in the back of the yards neighborhood. Police say Adrian Sanchez shot the teens while they were standing outside a house.
In August 2024, a drive-by shooting in Chicago's back of the yards neighborhood claimed the lives of 2 teenagers, Carlos Galindo and Miguel Meza, both described by family members as hard-working students with no confirmed gang involvement. According to police, the attack unfolded on August 3, 2024, in the 4800 block of South Winchester Avenue, when a vehicle pulled up in front of a home where the boys were standing. Without warning, a gunman opened fire, striking both victims multiple times before fleeing northbound toward 47th Street. The investigation, led by the Chicago Police Department's Area 1 detectives, quickly identified Adrian Sanchez as the suspected shooter. Surveillance footage from nearby cameras captured a silver sedan matching the description of Sanchez's vehicle circling the block moments before the attack. Witnesses later confirmed seeing Sanchez behind the wheel. Detectives also recovered shell casings at the scene that were linked through ballistics testing to a firearm used in a previous shooting tied to Sanchez's associates. Prosecutors with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office alleged that the shooting was gang-motivated, part of an ongoing feud between factions of the Latin Saints and a rival crew connected to the Satan Disciples, though investigators have not publicly confirmed the victims' affiliations. Police sources suggested that Sanchez may have believed the teens were associated with rivals. Authorities called the case a senseless act of retaliation that claimed the lives of 2 innocent kids. Sanchez was arrested in January 2025 following a warrant executed by the Great Lakes Regional Fugitive Task Force. During his bond hearing at the Layton Criminal Courthouse, prosecutors detailed the forensic evidence and surveillance footage linking him to the double deletion. Judge Kelly McCarthy ordered Sanchez held without bail, citing the brutality of the attack and the clear premeditation involved. Police said the shooting marked one of several high-profile attacks in back of the yards during the summer of 2024, involving assault-style weapons and retaliatory gang shootings, underscoring a resurgence of gang warfare in the neighborhood's southern corridor. In September 2013, one of Chicago's most shocking mass shootings unfolded in the back of the yards neighborhood when gunmen opened fire at a late-night basketball game at a park near 51st and Wood Street. The gunmen fired an assault-style rifle and handguns into a crowd of about 100 people, wounding 13 individuals, including a 3-year-old boy, Deonta Howard, who was struck in the face. The attack was later determined to be gang-related, a retaliation for an earlier shooting tied to the Black Pea Stones and Four Corner Hustlers gangs. Police quickly identified and arrested 4 suspects: Brian Champ, Tabari Young, Kewain Gatewood, and Brad Jeff. Investigators allege that Champ and Young were the shooters, with Champ firing a handgun and Young using an AK-47 style rifle equipped with a high-capacity magazine. Gatewood was accused of supplying the rifle, while Jeff acted as a lookout during the ambush. Authorities described Champ as a documented gang member with prior gun convictions, who had recently served time in prison and was on parole at the time of the shooting. The shooters fired indiscriminately from a nearby alley and fled, leaving behind dozens of shell casings. Despite the number of victims, no one was deleted, and the wounded, including 2 teenagers and the toddler, survived after extensive surgeries. Following lengthy pretrial proceedings, Brian Champ pleaded guilty in 2018 to multiple counts of attempted first-degree deletion and aggravated battery with a firearm. Lookout received an 8-year sentence for aiding and abetting the crime. The case became a focal point in Chicago's debate over gun access and gang violence, illustrating how military-style weapons had fueled mass shootings even in city neighborhoods with strict firearm ordinances. Superintendent Gary McCarthy and Mayor Rahm Emanuel publicly praised detectives for closing the case quickly, calling it an example of community cooperation and relentless police work. Deonta Howard, the child victim whose survival became a symbol of resilience, underwent multiple surgeries and later spoke publicly about his recovery. His family has since worked with local anti-violence groups to campaign against gang recruitment and to support stricter gun enforcement in Chicago. Victor Vasquez was charged with first-degree deletion in the back of the yard's demise of Albertano Medrano, who was shot while double-parked and waiting for his wife and a friend in the 4,500 block of South Hermitage. According to prosecutors' proffer, Vasquez was driving a stolen white van with an accomplice as they cruised the area looking for rivals. The passenger opened fire, striking Medrano in the neck, head, and back, and sending his vehicle crashing into parked cars. Officers recovered 10 spent casings on the block, and surveillance video. A short time later showed 2 suspects trying to stash something in a clothing donation bin near a gas station in the 5200 block of Southwestern. Police found an AK-47 in nearby bushes, with preliminary ballistics indicating a match to casings from the scene. Vasquez and his accomplice were arrested in an alley in the 5100 block of South Artesian. Vasquez admitted driving the van, and a judge set his bond at $1 million. In what police described as a violent and chaotic chain of events, a deadly shooting in Chicago's back of the yards neighborhood on a Monday evening left 1 man dead and 2 officers injured. Investigators say the incident began when 4 suspects later identified as Antonio Gonzalez, Isaac Corona, and 2 teenage boys aged 16 and 17 were riding in a stolen vehicle near the 5100 block of South Elizabeth Street. Around that time, gunfire erupted toward a 21-year-old man who was fatally struck. Witnesses reported seeing muzzle flashes from the moving vehicle as it sped away through residential streets. Responding officers quickly tracked the stolen car using automated license plate readers and pursued it as it fled the scene. The chase ended when the suspects crashed only minutes later. Corona and the 2 juveniles were captured at the crash site after a brief foot chase. Meanwhile, Gonzalez, who had fled the wreck, allegedly stole another vehicle in a desperate attempt to escape. When officers cornered him, he resisted violently, injuring 2 police officers during the struggle before being subdued and arrested. Authorities recovered multiple firearms believed to have been used in the shooting. Both Gonzalez and Corona were described by law enforcement sources as having prior gang affiliations tied to area factions operating in back of the yards, though police have not specified which group they belong to. The 21-year-old male victim, whose name has not been publicly released pending family notification, was pronounced dead at the scene. In the aftermath, Isaac Corona was charged with first-degree deletion, while Antonio Gonzalez faced multiple felonies, including attempted deletion, aggravated battery to a police officer, and unlawful possession of a stolen vehicle. The 17-year-old was charged with possession of a stolen vehicle and resisting arrest, and the 16-year-old with resisting.
Recovered 2 guns late Friday night. Scope officers arrested Edgar Rodriguez and Victor Gonzalez outside a home on Kent Street near West Street. Officers say they saw one of the men throw a gun to the ground. The loaded gun also had a laser and extended magazine on it. Another handgun was found inside a car parked at the house. Both Rodriguez and Gonzalez are charged with not having a FOID card and unlawful use of a weapon by a gang member.
On Friday, July 19th, Rockford police responded to the 700 block of Kent Street after receiving reports of a weapons violation involving alleged gang members. During the incident, officers observed one of the suspects attempting to discard a loaded handgun. 2 men, identified as Edgar Rodriguez and Victor Gonzalez, were taken into custody. Both face charges including unlawful use of a weapon by a gang member and possession of a firearm without a valid firearm owner's identification FOID card. Following their arrest, the suspects were transported to the Winnebago County Jail, where they await further court proceedings.
34-year-old man will spend more than 6 years behind bars for buying and selling and having weapons in Rockford.
This man, Rogelio Ibarra, pleaded guilty earlier this year to several charges. Ibarra admitted in a plea deal that he was a leader of the Rockford chapter of the gang Insane Unknowns. And between March of 2021 and January of 2022, he would give to other gang members to sell it on the streets and fund the gang's activities. Ibarra also said he owned several guns despite being previously convicted and sold them to other people.
A Rockford man has been sentenced to more than 6 years in federal prison for drug and firearm offenses. Rogelio Ibarra, identified by authorities as a leader of the Rockford chapter of the Insane Unknown Street Gang, pled guilty earlier this year to distributing and unlawfully possessing firearms. On September 12, 2024, U.S. District Judge Ian Johnston handed down a 76-month prison sentence. According to the Department of Justice, Ibarra admitted that between March 2021 and January 2022, he supplied drugs to fellow gang members, who sold it on the streets to raise money for the gang's activities. Despite a prior felony conviction, Ibarra also acknowledged possessing and selling 5 firearms, some of which he transferred to another individual.
7 men are in custody after police bust a drug ring.
And law enforcement warns criminals investigators are not stopping there. Police say the suspects were running a drug enterprise in Rockford. These arrests are the result of a months-long operation by city, state, and federal agencies. The help came not just in enforcing laws, but with funding to local departments through Project Safe Neighborhoods.
7 men have been charged with federal crimes for operating a drug enterprise in February 2020. A federal investigation into a Rockford drug network led to the arrest of 7 men and a multi-count indictment. Leaders Derek Jacobs aka Showtime, or G, and Rico Turner were charged in a conspiracy to distribute for activity between July and August 2019. Jacobs also faced separate counts for distributing, while Turner was charged with multiple drug distribution counts. Michael A. Alexander Big Mike and Rashid C. Davis Rock were indicted on additional drug distribution counts. Marcus Raymond, Terrell Hunter, and Charles Davis were charged with illegally possessing firearms as convicted felons.
A Rockford man wanted for an April shooting is taken into custody in the state of Washington. Officers in Kent arrested Christian Turner using information provided by the Rockford Police Department's Intel unit. In April, investigators say Turner and another suspect, Elijah Ford, exchanged gunfire with another car in the area of Westgate and Kilburn. Montrese Harris and a 17-year-old girl were in the other car. Harris was shot in the head. He survived. Harris and the teen girl have already been arrested.
Christian Turner, a Rockford resident, was arrested in Kent, Washington, after being wanted in connection with a gang-related shooting in Rockford. Authorities say the incident occurred on April 21, 2019, when two vehicles exchanged gunfire across several locations, including West State Street, Mulberry Street, and Kilburn Avenue. During the shooting, 19-year-old Montracy Harris was struck in the head but survived with non-life-threatening injuries. Following the investigation, Rockford police identified Turner as a suspect and obtained an arrest warrant. Working through the department's intelligence unit, officers were able to track him down in Washington, where he was taken into custody. Another suspect, identified as Elisha Ford, remained at large at the time of Turner's arrest.
That's right, Eric. Maybe Rockford police say a 20-year-old man was chased by a gunman and ended up dying just across the street. Shot spotter and phone calls led them to this house on Adams Street near Swedish American just before 6 this morning. Police say it all started with an argument between the man and 23-year-old Quentin Smith, and shots were fired. But when the victim tried getting into a car in East State, police say Smith opened fire, hitting the man and woman driver. The victim died at Swedish American.
Quinton, often reported as Quentin Smith, was arrested in June 2019 and charged with first-degree deletion, aggravated battery with a firearm, and unlawful use of a weapon as a street gang member in the fatal shooting of 20-year-old Joseph Hernandez. According to prosecutors, the deadly encounter began with an argument that escalated into gunfire and a subsequent chase near the 1300 block of State Street. Some social posts also reference Adams Street. Smith was convicted in late 2022 and, in March 2023, was sentenced to more than 55 years in prison. Carl "Short Dog" Ford, once the dominant leader of Rockford's black gangster disciples, stunned many when he won a sentence reduction that led to his early release in 2019. Ford had originally been sentenced to life in prison on drug convictions in November 1994 after prosecutors said his crew, known locally as the Mob, ran a violent, wide-ranging drug operation in Rockford. The life term was later reduced to 30 years and, with good behavior, trimmed again to 25 years, setting his release for November 9, 2019. At the height of his power, Ford's organization was accused of brutal enforcement tactics and open displays of force, drive-by shootings, armed patrols, and ruthless discipline for anyone who crossed the operation. Prosecutors described incidents in which suspected theft or incompetence was met with threats or violence. Witnesses say Ford himself once allegedly fired an Uzi at a house on Chestnut Street, and he faced multiple gun-related charges during the early 1990s. In 1993, a broad crackdown followed, with dozens arrested as part of an investigation into an extensive drug distribution network. Ford was charged in the resulting federal drug conspiracy case. Ford's sentence reduction reflected shifting views and policies as well as community and political support for reconsidering lengthy mandatory terms. His release after serving roughly 25 years sparked debate. Some welcomed a former leader's chance at rebuilding his life, while others feared the potential return of an old street power. Ford has since spoken publicly about reentry struggles and the need for stronger support systems for formerly incarcerated people. Carl Ford Jr., the son of former Rockford gang leader Carl "Short Dog" Ford Sr., was arrested last week on multiple drug trafficking charges, including manufacturing and delivering drugs, according to court records. Ford Jr. has a prior record. He received a 10-year sentence for armed robbery in 2012 and was later sentenced to 2 years in 2017 after being convicted as a felon in possession of a firearm following a police chase where officers say they found 2 handguns, drugs in his vehicle. His father, Carl Ford Sr., once led the Black Gangster Disciples in Rockford and served decades in prison on drug-related convictions before being released in 2019 after a petition reduced his sentence. Since his release, he has advocated for people re-entering society, telling reporters in 2021, "We paid our debt to society, so why do we still pay?" Baraner Douthert, a known member of Rockford's Three World Gang, was arrested Sunday after a dramatic vehicle pursuit and collision with police equipment. Police spotted him driving a Lexus with license plates reported stolen from Loves Park. He was already wanted in a previous police encounter, but fled rather than stop. During the pursuit, Douthert allegedly backed up his car at high speed, narrowly avoiding hitting an officer as he slammed into a squad car's open passenger side door. The impact caused the door to strike the officer inside. Then, after pushing the police vehicle into the roadside, Douther tried again to strike it with the Lexus, once more almost hitting a nearby officer. Despite the collisions, he continued resisting. His car eventually hit a privacy fence. Ignoring repeated orders from officers to stop and exit the vehicle, Douther remained inside until police broke out a window to pull him out. After a brief struggle, he was taken into custody. 2 loaded firearms were found inside the vehicle. Law enforcement charged him with a series of serious offenses: unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, possession of a firearm, aggravated assault, criminal damage to state property, fleeing to elude, and resisting arrest. K-9 units helped Rockford police apprehend 4 suspected gang members during a chase on Sunday afternoon. Officers spotted the men walking down the middle of Tay Street, but when approached, the group fled. Malachi Brown was caught immediately and found carrying a loaded firearm. He now faces charges of unlawful use of a weapon by a felon and unlawful use of a weapon by a gang member. Additional patrol units, Rockford Housing Authority officers, and K-9 teams were called in to track down the remaining suspects, recovering 2 discarded loaded guns with extended magazines. Harris was charged with unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a gang member, possession of a defaced firearm, and resisting arrest. Anderson faces charges of unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a gang member, and resisting arrest. The final suspect, Montrail Anderson, 19, was taken into custody after officers located him with a firearm equipped with a laser sight and extended magazine. Police also recovered 22 grams of Mary in his possession. He is charged with unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a gang member, possession of a stolen firearm, armed violence, possession of a controlled substance, and resisting arrest. Rockford police ended a 30 to 40-minute standoff Wednesday after officers from the gang unit located a vehicle near 15th Avenue and Nelson Boulevard occupied by 4 adults and a 15-year-old. The suspects initially refused to exit the car and eventually surrendered. Police recovered 2 firearms at the scene and charged all 5 occupants with multiple weapons offenses. On March 2020, Rockford police responded to reports of multiple shots fired on the 2300 block of Quincy Circle and later traced a suspect vehicle to the area of Auburn and Kilburn Avenue. After following the car to the 1200 block of School Street, officers conducted a traffic stop and say all of the passengers except the driver fled on foot but were quickly captured. Investigators found shell casings from 2 different guns in the street and discovered that 1 home and 2 parked cars had been struck by gunfire. 3 men were arrested and faced charges including aggravated discharge of a firearm. Police say MC Clendon and Anderson also face gang-related weapon counts, resisting arrest, and lack of FOID card allegations. A jury found Ricardo Jaimes guilty of first-degree deletion, attempted deletion, and aggravated discharge of a firearm in the demise of 16-year-old DeMarcus Robinson. Prosecutors say Jaimes acted as the wheel man during a gang-related ambush. His brother Isaac allegedly fired the shots after Jaimes displayed a rival gang sign from a silver Chevy Tahoe. William Patrick, who was with Robinson, was wounded but survived. After less than 2 days of testimony, the 12-member jury deliberated about 2.5 hours before returning the guilty verdict. Jaimes faces decades behind bars. Prosecutors say the combined sentences could include 35-75 years for the deletion count plus additional terms for the other convictions, and he is scheduled to be sentenced no 15.
26-year-old Eugene Haywood was convicted in December of racketeering conspiracy and 2 murders from 2013. As a result, he will serve life plus 10 years in federal prison for his role in the Peoria gang known as the Bomb Squad. Haywood is the first of 13 members of that gang to be sentenced, 12 of which are pictured here. The rest are set for sentencing over the next couple of weeks.
The jury finding that Bomb Squad gang members engaged in acts of violence. 3 people are charged in federal court for interfering in the 2019 Bomb Squad trial.
Yeah, the Bomb Squad is a gang in the Peoria area. Now, these are their mugshots from previous crimes. Now, Mrs. Crow was the mother of one of the Bomb Squad members, and she admitted to prosecutors that she told witnesses they didn't have to cooperate with the government. She also allegedly stood in the door of the courthouse and harassed and intimidated witnesses under subpoena.
And Damoni Coleman was charged with criminal contempt for resisting the court's order to answer questions as a witness.
And Ryan Greenwood was charged with perjury after he allegedly made false statements under oath as a witness.
This goes back to 2013. Most of them are facing up to 20 years behind bars, but some of them up to life in prison.
Federal investigators have long described the Bomb Squad as one of Peoria's most violent and entrenched gangs. By 2013, the group had gained a reputation for brazen shootings, deletions, arsons, and drug trafficking. That reputation culminated in June 2018, when the DEA and federal prosecutors announced a sweeping racketeering indictment against 15 alleged members, charging them with a 5-year campaign of violence. The gang's violent history can be traced to a series of brutal incidents beginning in 2013. On June 23rd of that year, Eugene "Nunu" Haywood shot and rival Eric "Greedy" Brown on a Peoria porch he met his demise. Just 3 weeks later, on July 15th, Haywood and Bomb Squad leader Raheem "Boosie" Wilson conspired to delete Terran Chester, an outsider suspected of drug dealing in their territory. Chester was shot in the head and died instantly. The violence escalated further in May 2016, when Wilson led a robbery and shooting at a dice game during a territorial dispute. 1 month later, in June 2016, Bomb Squad member Jovan McCree fired a .308 rifle at a car he believed carried rivals. The shot missed its intended target, but penetrated a nearby home and struck an 11-year-old girl asleep on a couch. Though she survived, the case highlighted how reckless the gang's violence had become. Bomb Squad members were equally willing to use arson and theft as weapons. In February 2017, member Terry Moss attempted to burn down a rival's home in retaliation for the demise of Wilson. That summer, in August 2017, Sherman Williams, Kenwan Crow, and others burglarized a residence and stole a safe containing 12 firearms, later redistributed among Bomb Squad members to fuel further crimes.
Najee Murray was killed early Sunday morning at a house party in Peoria near the campus of Bradley University, where she was a first-year student majoring in pre-med. At a news conference this afternoon, Peoria police said Murray's body was one of 2 found inside the house.
It was a social media advertised party that people from the Peoria area as well as Bradley University students went to attend. Approximately 100 people were seen leaving from the area. We have recovered 13 cell phones, so anyone who is there who needs to get these cell phones back, please come to the Peoria Police Department. We would like to talk to you because we know you were there.
Peoria police have arrested a 16-year-old suspect in the murder of a Bradley College student from Chicago. Freshman Najee Murray was early Sunday morning at a house party in Peoria that's near the campus of Bradley University. More than 100 people were at that party. Police also found a male victim in the home. The suspect is now being held in the Peoria County Juvenile Detention
The gang's most infamous act came on April 8, 2018, when Kentrevion Tutu Watkins and a juvenile associate provided a firearm later used in the fatal shooting of Anthony Ponitz, a rival, and 21-year-old Bradley University student Najee Murray, an innocent bystander. Murray's death, widely covered in local and national media, became a central focus of the federal prosecution. In June 2018, a federal grand jury issued a racketeering indictment against 15 alleged members, explicitly tying the gang to 4 deletions, more than 20 shootings, and 2 residential arsons between 2013 and 2018. Prosecutors argued that Bomb Squad members operated under standing orders to shoot rivals on sight, and trial evidence revealed that participants often boasted about their crimes on social media. After a multi-week trial in late 2019, 13 defendants were convicted of racketeering conspiracy and related charges. The convictions underscored how deeply violence had defined the gang, with prosecutors highlighting the 2 innocent bystanders harmed the wounded 11-year-old girl and Bradley student Najee Murray as tragic examples of the group's disregard for human life. Sentencing took place in mid-2020, marking one of the most significant crackdowns on gang violence in Peoria's history. Eugene Haywood, who had personally carried out the deletions of Eric Brown and Taryn Chester, received a life sentence plus 10 years. Other convicted members faced prison terms ranging from 12 to 40 years. Attorney John Milheiser stated that the sentences should send a message that gang-driven violence would not be tolerated in Central Illinois.
And Corrupt Organizations Act charges against 10 people who belong to what is being called a violent street gang. The 4 adults and 6 minors have been linked to several violent incidents over the past 2 years. At least 3 murders and 12 shootings, with around 400 shots fired across those incidents. Police recovered 18 guns from them. 4 of those firearms have a switch that converts the gun into a fully automatic weapon. Also, over 30 cell phones were searched as part of the investigation. 18-year-old Corian Hopkins, 20-year-olds Keon Patterson and Messiah Carpenter, and 22-year-old Quandarius Jones were indicted Tuesday by a Peoria County grand jury. 2 16-year-old boys and 4 17-year-old boys were also charged in juvenile court, and prosecutors want to move their cases to adult court.
With an update to a developing story, 3 of the adult men charged as gang members in Peoria pleaded not guilty to their racketeering charges this morning. 18-year-old Corian Hopkins, 20-year-old Keon Patterson, and 20-year-old Messiah Carpenter were charged with being part of an organized crime group. Those charges are a first for Peoria County.
The Snakes have emerged in recent years as one of Peoria's most dangerous street gangs, tied to multiple deletions and a series of reckless shootings. Between 2023 and 2024, police linked the group to at least 3 deletions and a dozen gun attacks.
Good Thursday morning. We begin today with breaking news. 6 people are in the hospital after a mass shooting in Peoria.
That's right. Police say the victims include 4 juveniles and 2 adults. A man and juvenile boy have critical injuries. The others have non-life-threatening injuries. The shooting happened last night on West Marquette Street near South Moreland around 9 p.m.
Here's what we know so far. Police say they responded to 2 ShotSpotter alerts, totaling 29 rounds fired. At the scene, they found 6 victims, 5 with gunshot wounds and 1 with a laceration. They were all sent to the hospital within minutes.
A 22-year-old man is in jail after being arrested in connection with a deadly shooting in Peoria nearly 2 years ago that left 4 others with gunshot wounds. Giovanni Williams Jr. being booked into the Peoria County Jail today. 16-year-old Antonio Walker and 4 others were shot. Walker died about a month later from his injuries. It appears the shooting was part of an ongoing feud between the 2 rival groups, which were both linked to multiple shootings over the years.
The first high-profile case came on April 9, 2023, when 16-year-old Antonio Walker was gunned down in South Peoria. Prosecutors later charged 22-year-old Nasson Booker with Walker's demise, identifying him as a member of the Snakes.
An after-prom party turned violent. Peoria County Sheriff Chris Watkins says 48 rounds of gunfire were fired at Valley Lake Center in rural Chillicothe around 1 a.m. Sunday morning. Deputies say a fight had broken out in the parking lot. That violence left an 18-year-old boy shot in the head. And deputies report the victim had a weapon in his waistband, later traced as stolen from Texas.
Developing story. A 16 and 18-year-old are in custody for a post-prom shooting from last April in Chillicothe. The 16-year-old boy and Corian Hopkins have both been charged with aggravated battery with a firearm and for not having a FOID card. Shots rang out just before 1 a.m. on April 28th at the Valley Lake Center parking lot. Officers found the shooting victim on the ground with a gunshot wound to the head. He was taken to a local hospital with life-threatening injuries, but survived.
In the courtroom, a Peoria juvenile's detention hearing has been postponed. 16-year-old Amari Smith-Hawley appeared in court remotely from the Peoria County Juvenile Detention Center. He is being charged with aggravated battery stemming from an April 28th shooting where an 18-year-old was shot in the head after prom. Smith-Hawley faces 6 to 30 years in prison and is being tried as an adult.
Just weeks later, on April 28, 2024, another act of violence made headlines when 16-year-old Amari Smith-Hawley, described as affiliated with the Snakes, allegedly opened fire into a crowd at a rural post-prom party. The shooting left an 18-year-old member of a rival crew, the Jump Out Boys, paralyzed and witnesses told investigators the attack was rooted in an ongoing feud between the two groups.
18-year-old Mikese Taylor was a college athlete, Peoria High School graduate, and a new father. On Tuesday night before 7:30 p.m., Taylor was shot in a driveway near the intersection of Knoxville and Forest Hill Avenues. He ran 2 buildings down to a gas station and was taken to a hospital and died shortly after. Those who know Taylor say he was back from Kansas City, Kansas Community College, visiting his 2-month-old son.
Story now, a 20-year-old Peoria man appeared today in court accused of killing a former Peoria High basketball player. This charge is in connection with the death of Mikese Taylor, who was shot on April 30th. The shooting happened near the intersection of Forest Hill and Knoxville Avenues. According to charges filed, Carpenter knowingly discharged a firearm, resulting in the death of Taylor.
Corian B. Hopkins, an 18-year-old from Peoria, is one of the defendants charged in the county's sweeping RICO case against the Snake Street Gang. Prosecutors say Hopkins is directly tied to the April 30th, 2024 shooting death of Mikese Taylor, an 18-year-old former Peoria High basketball standout who was playing junior college ball at the time. Taylor was gunned down in a driveway near Forest Hill and Knoxville Avenues, and investigators later identified Hopkins and another suspect, Messiah Carpenter, through surveillance footage of the suspect's vehicle. Authorities also recovered a video from Hopkins' phone that allegedly showed one of the shooters, dressed in a black hoodie, white t-shirt, and gray mask. Prosecutors have further noted that Taylor was believed to have ties to a rival group known as the Jump Out Boys, which has been feuding with the Snakes. Hopkins faces not only the deletion charge, but also additional allegations, including involvement in the April 2024 shooting at an after-prom party in Chillicothe, where another young man was critically wounded. In August 2024, Hopkins entered a plea of not guilty to the deletion of Taylor. In October, Peoria County prosecutors filed racketeering charges against 10 members of the Snakes, 4 adults and 6 juveniles, marking the first time a RICO case had been brought at the county level in Peoria. Officials said the group was collectively responsible for a rash of violence stretching back 2 years, which included at least 3 deletions and 12 shootings. During the investigation, police seized 18 firearms from Snakes members, 4 of which had been illegally modified with automatic switches. State's Attorney Jody, who's described the gang as a violent group joined together to terrorize our community, stressing that the use of RICO would hold the entire organization accountable, not just individual shooters. The prosecutions carried into 2025 with additional defendants swept into the case. In May, a grand jury indicted 17-year-old Skylar Jordan on racketeering and weapons charges, making him the 3rd juvenile suspect formally charged under RICO. His indictment reiterated the now familiar evidence: 3 deletions, a dozen shootings, and a cache of 18 firearms, several of them altered to fire fully automatic. In August, Nissan Booker, already accused of the demise of Antonia Walker, became the 11th defendant formally tied to the Snakes RICO probe. He now faces both racketeering charges and first-degree deletion counts. Another man, Jivany Walker Jr., has also been charged in connection with Walker's death, broadening the scope of the case. As of late 2025, the charges remain pending, with several defendants originally charged as juveniles transferred into adult court. Investigators say the Snakes' members were often caught on surveillance or in phone records bragging about shootings or conspiring to plan them, echoing the digital trail that prosecutors once used to convict the bomb squad. For law enforcement, the RICO indictments represent a dramatic attempt to shut down an organization that has brought a new wave of fear to Peoria's neighborhoods. Prosecutors emphasize that the Snakes' stockpile of heavy weaponry and their string of shootings are precisely the type of criminal activity the racketeering statute was designed to dismantle, and they have vowed to press forward until the gang's network is fully broken apart. In October 2015, Peoria police arrested 7 suspects in connection with the home invasion shooting that claimed the life of 14-year-old Tommy Forrest III. Forrest had been asleep at a friend's house in the city's West Bluff neighborhood when intruders stormed in and opened fire, meeting his demise and injuring 3 other teenagers. Investigators later confirmed that one of the suspects, Alex Collins, had prior ties to a local street crew known as the Cleanup Crew. 4 of the defendants were ultimately charged with Forrest's demise and home invasion. Collins, identified as one of the triggermen, was convicted in 2019 of first-degree deletion and attempted deletion. He received a 95-year prison sentence, bringing what prosecutors described as long overdue accountability for a crime that shook the community. Police credited anonymous tips and cooperation from witnesses as crucial to solving the case. Over the years, 4 of the 7 suspects have been convicted or pleaded guilty, each receiving lengthy prison terms. Federal prosecutors have announced that 12 alleged members of Peoria's Zone 4 gang have been indicted, marking the second major roundup under the city's anti-violence initiative, Don't Shoot. The defendants, all Peoria residents between the ages of 23 and 34, now face federal charges following a year of coordinated investigation. This new wave of indictments follows the first round last year, when 12 other offenders were brought up on similar charges. The Don't Shoot collaboration brings together the Attorney's Office, the Peoria Mayor, the Chief of Police, and the Peoria County Sheriff. While some critics point out that shootings and violent crime have continued despite the program, Sheriff Mike McCoy insists the initiative is making a measurable impact. 29 people who have shot people in Peoria in the last year are off the streets, McCoy said. They are no longer out there. That should answer about 90% of the questions people have. The other thing is, in the state court, there have been 51 indictments. 31 of them have either pled guilty or been found guilty. The other 20 are waiting, and nobody has been found not guilty. McCoy acknowledged that crime will not disappear completely, but argued the program is working because the jail is full. The latest indictments stem from the ongoing efforts of the FBI and the Peoria Police Department. Still, challenges remain. Peoria's police chief noted that while individuals tied to the bomb squad have received the Don't Shoot message, the gang as a whole remains active. Authorities plan to continue the program with another police gang call-in meeting scheduled for Wednesday, part of their strategy to maintain pressure on violent groups across the city.
Violence and gangs. In Joliet, Illinois, for example, population just 77,000, there were 288 gang-related shootings from January of last year through November. In November, the prosecutors decided it was time to try a different approach. Here's ABC's Kathy Wolf.
The mass arrest of gang members in Joliet came after a particularly brutal crime. A gang firebombed the home of Nicolasa Esquivel in November. They were after the woman's grandsons. The boys escaped. The 91-year-old woman burned to death.
For the people who live here, it's just the nightmare that we were all waiting for, an escalation in the violence.
The highly publicized case led authorities to take an unusual step. State Attorney James Glasgow indicted not only those who allegedly committed the crime, but those who allegedly planned it. To do that, he used charges rarely used in gang cases, conspiracy and mob action. It allowed him to arrest 47 defendants at once in connection with 3 different. Even gang members agree the mass arrests have quieted the streets.
It's definitely that. It's got to be that, because there ain't been none since.
The conspiracy charges may be hard to prove in court. They depend on the testimony of other gang members who are rarely convincing to juries. But the prosecutor plans to continue the tactic to try to keep the most violent gang members off the street.
Violence and gangs. In Joliet, Illinois, for example, population just 77,000. There were 288 gang-related shootings from January of last year through November. In November, the prosecutors decided it was time to try a different approach. Here's ABC's Kathy Wolf.
The mass arrest of gang members in Joliet came after a particularly brutal crime. A gang firebombed the home of Nicolasa Esquivel in November. They were after the woman's grandsons. The boys escaped. The 91-year-old woman burned to death.
For the people who live here, it's just the nightmare that we were all waiting for, an escalation in the violence.
The highly publicized case led authorities to take an unusual step. State Attorney James Glasgow indicted not only those who allegedly committed the crime, but those who allegedly planned it. To do that, he used charges rarely used in gang cases, conspiracy.
In jail to hold them at least for a while.
Even gang members agree the mass arrests have quieted the streets.
It's definitely that. It's got to be that, because there ain't been none since.
The conspiracy charges may be hard to prove in court. They depend on the testimony of other gang members who are rarely convincing to juries. But the prosecutor plans to continue the tactic to try to keep the most violent gang members off the streets. Kathy Wolf, ABC News, Joliet, Illinois.
This effort involved weeks of planning, culminating in a single-day operation aimed at removing dangerous people from the streets of Joliet. As a result, 21 individuals were arrested yesterday on a variety of charges. While the city has seen a decrease in crime this year, the operation was specifically aimed at addressing the recent uptick in violent crimes. Among the nearly 24 suspects taken into custody was 25-year-old Diamanta Barber. Barber faces charges of aggravated discharge of a firearm, possession of a weapon by a felon, and is allegedly linked to a shooting that took place in the 1400 block of North Center in July. However, the police are especially proud to have arrested 25-year-old Demetrius Houston Jr. and 20-year-old Donnell Brown.
Following a brief foot pursuit, both were found to be in possession of a handgun. Both handguns have been modified with an automatic switch.
In late 2024, Joliet police launched Operation Street Sweeper, a coordinated crackdown that led to the arrest of 21 suspects tied to weapons, drugs, burglary, and theft offenses across the city. The operation, which involved the Joliet Police Department, Will County State's Attorney's Office, and federal partners, including the ATF and U.S. Marshals, was designed to target repeat offenders and high-risk individuals believed to be driving the city's recent surge in gun violence. Joliet Police Chief Bill Evans said the initiative was a direct response to a spike in shootings and a renewed effort to take dangerous individuals off the streets before further violence occurred. Authorities described it as a proactive, intelligence-driven sweep that had been in development for months, with officers serving warrants, executing searches, and conducting surveillance on known offenders. Investigators emphasized that many of those arrested were repeat offenders with extensive criminal histories, and the operation's focus was on suspects statistically most likely to re-offend or become involved in retaliatory violence. Several automatic and semi-automatic firearms were seized, including multiple Glock handguns with illegal conversion devices. Police described these recoveries as critical, noting that removing such weapons from circulation could prevent future homicides. Following the sweep, officials described Operation Street Sweeper as a major success, citing the large number of warrants cleared and the immediate disruption of criminal networks within Joliet. They also drew parallels to a similar mass arrest in 1993, which saw nearly 50 gang members detained and a subsequent drop in shootings across the city. Community leaders and prosecutors hope this operation will yield similar results, particularly in reducing retaliatory gun violence.
A mass shooting at a Halloween party in Joliet Township. 2 people are dead and more than a dozen others injured.
Further down behind me is that house where close to 200 people gathered for that party. One that grew so big that friends of the host say people were showing up that they didn't even recognize.
We got 3 victims in the back. 1 gunshot wound to the back, 1 to the head, and 1 to the chest.
A backyard Halloween party spiraled quickly into a nightmare.
I just heard people like screaming, saying there's bodies on the floor. People were getting hit. I seen people come out with like blood on their hands.
The gunfire that left at least 2 dead and a dozen injured at the party sent everyone else running for their lives.
There was people running in the forest and just jumping the fence, trying to, I don't know if I seen them, maybe like 10 people. They were trying to go through people's yards.
As police investigate, witnesses are still trying to understand how this happened.
People are showing up that
we literally had no idea who they were. And even the host of the party, she was like, I don't even know these people, like, where did they even come from?
Sisters Vanessa and Valerie didn't want to reveal their last names, afraid of repercussions, but shared this photo of happier times from the night before it turned deadly.
You just hear like these popping sounds. It was like a whole wave of people. They just fell backwards on top of everyone.
They realized quickly this was no Halloween prank.
All you see is everybody, like on the floor, and then when everybody starts to get up and they're like scrambling over each other trying to get out, I see, there's this guy in front of me just on the floor. Everybody was just running over him and stomping over him.
Unable.
In late 2021 and early 2022, law enforcement in Will County made key arrests tied to the deadly mass shooting at a Joliet Township Halloween party on October 31st, 2021, which left Holly Matthews and Jonathan Ceballos dead and several others wounded. 3 men, Joscar Ramos, Thomas Lopez, and Jeremy Lopez, were arrested and charged in connection with the attack. On November 5th, 2021, Ramos was apprehended by the Will County Sheriff's Office on weapons violations. Witnesses say that while being taken into custody, Ramos attempted to stash a firearm on his rooftop. He was detained without incident and held on $1 million bond for the weapons offenses. Later, on January 4th, 2022, investigators with the Will County Gang Suppression Unit and the Warrant Division, working with the U.S. Marshals Great Lakes Regional Fugitive Task Force, arrested Thomas and Jeremy Lopez at their residences following surveillance and investigation. Thomas had been under observation for hours. Jeremy was hidden in a residence with his young child when found. Law enforcement also arrested Jeremy's girlfriend, Reina Rodriguez, on outstanding drug-related warrants while securing the scene. Prosecutors allege that all 3 men are affiliated with the Vice Lords gang and have extensive firearms and violent criminal histories. Each faces identical charges: 6 counts of first-degree deletion, attempted first-degree deletion, 5 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm, aggravated discharge of a firearm, and aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. In subsequent developments, the scope of the case expanded. In February 2023, prosecutors added charges after a 3rd victim, Sergio Hernandez, who was paralyzed in the original shooting, later died from those injuries. That brought the total alleged fatalities to 3. Ramos attempted a legal move in March 2025 to represent himself, asking the court to allow him to proceed without counsel, a request that was granted in part, allowing him to fire his public defender and demand full disclosure of police reports, interrogations, and evidence. His next hearing was scheduled for April 16, 2025. In July 2025, a judge denied Thomas Lopez's motion to suppress statements he gave to deputies, ruling that Lopez had not validly invoked his right to counsel and that his statements were voluntary. That decision strengthened prosecutors' access to evidence in trial preparation. Meanwhile, Jeremy Lopez and Ramos had their pre-trial hearings set for September 15, 2025, and David Grijalva, another suspect later added to the indictment, was scheduled for court on September 24, 2025. Grijalva, who is alleged to have fired into the same crowd, was charged in October 2024 as the 4th suspect. In November 2021, officers from the Will County Sheriff's Office Warrant Unit, in cooperation with the U.S. Marshals Service Great Lakes Regional Fugitive Task Force, arrested David Grijalva in the 900 block of Wood Street in Joliet, Illinois. He was wanted on a laundry list of serious charges, including attempted deletion, aggravated battery with a firearm, aggravated discharge of a firearm, and 2 counts of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. Investigators had identified him earlier at a relative's residence. When they confirmed he was inside, they entered and took him into custody without incident, finding him in a basement bedroom. Grijalva is alleged to be a known associate of the Vice Lords street gang, and law enforcement asserted that he regularly carried firearms. In a later development, he was charged as a 4th suspect in a fatal mass, shooting at a Halloween party in Joliet Township on October 31, 2021, which left 3 people dead and many others wounded, with prosecutors alleging a gang-related feud and linking casings from that scene to other shootings. Despite an earlier bail release on other charges, a judge later denied his attempt to use cash bail following new first-degree deletion charges. In February 2016, law enforcement in the Joliet area launched a sweeping crackdown on members of the Latin King street gang, culminating in the arrest of 19 individuals on state and federal drug, weapons, and violent crime charges. The most serious of those charges centered on the 2010 shooting death of Nicole Natalie Rodriguez, who was fatally shot while seated in a car with her young daughter. On February 23, 2010, Rodriguez was sitting in a parked car when an assailant fired into the vehicle, striking her twice as her 8-year-old daughter watched from the back seat. The attack left the community shaken and became a cold case for years until new evidence helped investigators connect it to the Latin Kings. Among those arrested was Aaron Bowers of Joliet, who was charged with first-degree deletion in connection to Rodriguez's death, along with multiple weapons violations, including possession of a firearm by a felon and illegal sale of a firearm. His bond was set at $2.5 million. The operation that led to his arrest, known as Operation King Kong, was a joint effort. During the sweep, authorities seized more than 40 firearms and various drugs. Other defendants charged alongside Bowers included Jordan Rent, Salvador de Los Angeles, David de Los Angeles, Miguel Antonino, Miguel Holloway Valadez, Samuel Williams, Mario Quintero, Ralph Garcia, Salvador Lopez, Kimberly Ledwell, Gabriel Travis, Juan Martinez, and Abiel Razo, all facing various narcotics and weapons offenses. Ralph Garcia, a 56-year-old with a violent criminal history that included shooting a Joliet police officer in 1992, was among those charged federally. The arrests were part of a broader strategy to dismantle the Latin Kings network and disrupt their control over narcotics and weapons trafficking in the region. Tragically, the lead defendant, Aaron Bowers, never faced trial. On April 23, 2019, he was found unresponsive in his jail cell at the Will County Adult Detention Facility and later pronounced dead at a local hospital. The Will County Coroner's Office determined that his death resulted from natural causes, specifically dilated cardiomyopathy, a heart condition. With his death, prosecutors filed a motion to close the case against him. Although Bowers' death prevented a full trial for the demise of Nicole Rodriguez, the 2016 operation dealt a major blow to the Latin Kings' presence in Joliet. Authorities said the arrest disrupted the gang's leadership structure, removed violent offenders from the streets, and significantly reduced the flow of narcotics and illegal firearms in Will County. The case remains one of the largest and most coordinated anti-gang crackdowns in the area's recent history. On June 1, 2024, Fernando Contreras was fatally shot in Joliet amid what prosecutors say was a gang-related dispute. In response, authorities charged Elian Raya and John Roy Hernandez Jr., both from Joliet, with first-degree deletion in connection with the demise. 2 additional men were wounded in the same incident. According to court documents and prosecutorial statements, video surveillance showed a vehicle looping past Contreras' residence twice before the shooting. Afterward, 2 suspects exited the car, entered through an open fence, and lingered on the property for about 2 minutes before opening fire. A neighbor later reported hearing around 15 shots. Investigators recovered 31 shell casings, which they say came from 2 separate 9 handguns. Contreras was struck by a gunshot to the head and died. 1 victim suffered a graze wound to the head, and another was struck 4 times. The victims had been inside the home watching a televised fight before the attack. Further details indicate that the motive appears tied to a long-standing feud. Prosecutors assert that gang-related evidence ties the shooting to past tensions. Raya also faces charges for aggravated fleeing from police after a high-speed chase that traversed Interstate 80, Illinois Route 59, Jefferson Street, and concluded in Shorewood. Regarding the defendants' backgrounds, Hernandez has a history of violent cases. Prior to this, he had been arrested multiple times on drive by shooting and assault charges and had been released on bond in earlier cases. Members of violent street crew, convicted of armed robbery and jewelry heist. In August 2014, two men, Juan Ramos and Saul Sandoval, executed a bold armed robbery targeting jewelry dealers. The pair, believed to be affiliated with the Gangster Two-Six Street crew, followed their victim from a swap Aurora flea market in Chicago to a residence in Riverside. As the jeweler stepped out of his vehicle in the suburban driveway, the robbers, masked and armed, forced him to the ground and stole over $30,000 in cash and jewelry. One victim had a gold chain ripped from his neck. When a 76-year-old woman came to investigate the commotion, Sandoval allegedly brandished a weapon and threatened her, demanding she stay out of this. The robbers fled to a waiting getaway car. Investigators pieced together their movements by analyzing surveillance footage from businesses along their route, such as Swap-O-Rama and a Berwyn, fruit market, and cross-referencing cell phone tower pings. Within days, police located and arrested Ramos and Sandoval, both of whom had admitted gang associations. After a 5-day jury trial in Cook County, both men were convicted of armed robbery on March 20th, 2015. Prosecutors had offered them a plea deal for 10 years, which they rejected. The jury returned guilty verdicts after about 4 hours of deliberation. Ramos was sentenced to 29 years in Illinois State Prison, while Sandoval received 23 years. The sentence terms required that they serve 85% of that time before being eligible for release. However, Ramos later appealed. In 2018, an Illinois appellate court reversed his conviction and remanded his case for a new trial. The court held that a key piece of evidence, historical cell site, data summarizing his phone's tower pings, as testified to by a detective, was improperly admitted as hearsay without proper authentication, and also found error in limiting defense counsel's closing argument. At that time, Sandoval's conviction remained intact, though the appellate decision raised the possibility of further review or retrial for both. As of the latest public records, Ramos's original conviction had not stood unaltered, and the appellate decision had reopened procedural questions in his case. Sandoval's conviction and sentence stood, unless further appeal or retrial altered his status. In early morning hours, Joliet police arrested Tyler Finch after a string of shootings left one house struck by bullets and several statues ostensibly broken. Officers first received reports of gunfire into the air near the unit block of Hunter Avenue. They soon learned the same suspect had then fired upon a residence in the 100 block of Illinois Street. Responding units located Finch in a vehicle on Illinois Street, where he admitted to having a handgun in the console. A weapon was recovered, and investigators noted the serial number had been removed or defaced. One home sustained bullet damage consistent with the recovered firearms ammunition. Finch, who resides on the same block, was arrested without incident and jailed in Will County. He was charged with a number of serious offenses: aggravated discharge of a firearm, reckless discharge of a firearm, unlawful possession of a firearm by a street gang member, defacing identification marks on the weapon, possession of a firearm without a FOID card, and criminal damage to property. Court documents indicate Finch also faced allegations of a related shooting at his own residence, where he reportedly fired weapons at people inside the home. Prosecutors contend that Finch's actions were not random, but part of an escalation of conflict. Though not all details are publicly confirmed, the criminal complaint states he was angry about disputes within his household when he allegedly discharged rounds toward both his residence and nearby streets. In a sweeping anti-gang operation, Joliet and Will County authorities arrested 16 people and seized a large cache of drugs and firearms during what was described as one of the area's biggest coordinated crackdowns. The early morning raids targeted armed offenders and suspected gang members believed to be fueling gun violence in the region. By the end of the operation, police had confiscated 31 illegal firearms, including several semi-automatic handguns and rifles, along with more than 200 grams of coke. 16 suspects were taken into custody on felony charges ranging from unlawful use of a weapon to armed habitual criminal and drug trafficking. Among those arrested was J. Allen Nink Jr., who faced the most serious charges: armed habitual criminal, gun running, and multiple weapons violations, with a $1 million bond. Others included Jose Sanchez, Cesar Zavala, Andrew Knox, Jessica Franchini, James Talmadge, Charles Jelly, and Anthony Alexander, all charged with varying combinations of narcotics and weapons offenses. Authorities noted that several of the defendants were documented gang members with prior gun convictions. 4 Joliet area gang members were arrested Wednesday afternoon in a case that police say involved efforts to intimidate and recruit students near Joliet Central High School. Deputy Chief Ed Gregory explained that 3 adult men and 1 17-year-old juvenile had been loitering in the parking lot of a barbershop at 301 East Cass Street, directly across from the school, in apparent gang colors. Authorities believe their presence was part of a pattern, showing up in gang regalia and making gestures or physical contact in prior incidents to coerce or entice students into gang activity. Officers conducted a protective sweep of the area and took the 4 into custody. Because police did not observe active threats or direct intimidation at that moment, charges were limited to criminal trespass to property they were simply on the premises without authorization. But local law enforcement emphasized that this action was preventive in nature. In previous confrontations, the same individuals had flashed gang signs, got into physical scuffles with students, and made students feel unsafe. The court records state that Finch's presence in past situations had crossed the line into overt recruitment and intimidation. The men's addresses were publicly reported. Prince is from the 1300 block of Richmond Street, Venson from the 500 block of Chase, Ward from the 1000 block of Garfield and Lockport, and the juvenile's identity was withheld. No gang was officially named during the announcement to avoid amplifying their notoriety. All 4 were held for trespass and scheduled to appear before the appropriate juvenile or criminal court. From mass arrests like Operation Street Sweeper to the Vice Lord's Halloween Party Massacre, and from the Latin King's 2016 Operation King Kong takedown to the Gangster Two-Six jewelry heist convictions, each case underscores the same brutal truth: Joliet's gang violence runs in waves. Every new generation inherits the grudges of the last, replaying cycles of revenge that have haunted neighborhoods for decades. Yet, behind every arrest and indictment is a glimpse of progress. Police and prosecutors have shown an increasing ability to connect local incidents to broader criminal networks, using federal partnerships, data-driven targeting, and community outreach. Each gun seized, each leader convicted, it chips away at a culture of fear that once seemed permanent. Joliet's story isn't just about gangs and guns, it's about endurance. It's about a city constantly reinventing itself, from its industrial heyday to its modern revival, and now to its ongoing battle for safety and identity. The same grit that built Joliet's steel mills fuels its resilience today. As the city moves forward, its residents, law enforcement, and leaders remain determined to ensure Joliet is remembered not for its violence, but for its strength, culture, and unbreakable will to change.
By communities, Aurora police say a multi-year investigation into Latin King's activity culminated this week with 18 people charged on gun and drug felonies. Investigators with the department's Special Operations Group say tips in fall 2019 led them to uncover an extensive trafficking network and recover illegal firearms and narcotics across Aurora, Elgin, Montgomery, and DeKalb. 13 suspects were arrested in the sweep. 2 are already in custody on unrelated charges, and 3 remain at large on Kane County indictments. Court papers allege the defendants identified as members or affiliates of the Latin Kings face a range of counts, including unlawful delivery of controlled substances, possession of firearms by felons or gang members, illegal firearms sales, and weapons offenses involving defaced serial numbers. Police Chief Keith Cross called the operation a major step in Aurora's effort to reduce violent crime and remove illegal guns and drugs from the streets. After nearly 3 years of undercover investigation, a total of 96 felony charges have been filed against 16 gang members from West Suburban Aurora, authorities announced Friday. FBI agents assisted Aurora police in Operation Try Lambs, involving confidential informants inside the Latin King Street gang to set up controlled drug and weapons purchases, according to city spokesman Dan Farelli. 13 guns and 22 were seized. On 10 June 2017, Rodolfo Roca Jr. was fatally shot outside a home on Grove Street after two men later identified as Anthony C. Medina and Martin Garcia Jr. approached the group, demanded gang affiliation, and, when Roca said he wasn't a gang member, opened fire. Prosecutors say Medina fired multiple rounds, at least a dozen, toward the crowd. Roca met his demise, and others were narrowly spared. A Kane County jury convicted Medina in February 2022 of first-degree deletion, armed violence, and related firearm offenses, and in April a judge sentenced him to an aggregate term of 80 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Officials noted Medina's long history of gang involvement and prior gun convictions when seeking a heavy sentence, and he is required to serve the sentence in full. Garcia was separately convicted and in 2020 received a 75-year prison term for his role in the slaying. Aurora police arrested two adults, Leatrey Davis and Wesley Harmon, late one night after responding to a tip about a gathering on the city's east side in the 400 block of Melrose Avenue. Officers say several people ran and two were seen tossing handguns, and investigators recovered 3 illegal firearms at the scene. Davis and Harmon were booked on felony counts that include aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, possession of a firearm by a street gang member. The juvenile faces multiple weapons charges plus aggravated assault and resisting arrest. According to court records, Davis and Harmon were being held on and 7-figure bail amounts, and the most serious counts carry prison exposure if convicted. Andres Ramirez Jr. was convicted in May 2022 of armed violence, aggravated discharge of a firearm, and unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon after prosecutors showed he stepped onto Jefferson Street in Aurora on 19 March 2020 and fired 8 shots at a marked police car. Rounds struck a nearby house and a parked vehicle, but no one was injured. A Kane County jury found him guilty, and on 27 June 2022 Judge David Clement sentenced Ramirez to 55 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Prosecutors emphasized that Ramirez committed the offense while on parole for a prior attempted deletion conviction and pointed to his previous firearm offenses and history of gang involvement when urging a lengthy sentence. On 24 May 2017, undercover Aurora officers investigating a string of burglaries pulled into a driveway on Grove Street when Jorge Guzman ran toward the unmarked van, pulled a handgun, and fired at the officers. Those officers returned fire. Guzman pleaded guilty on 27 December 2019 to 2 counts of aggravated discharge of a firearm at a peace officer, and Judge Donald Tegler accepted a 16-year prison term in exchange for the plea. Under Illinois law, Guzman must serve at least 85% of the sentence. He received credit for 948 days already served in the Kane County Jail. Prosecutors emphasized that the case and the heavy sentence reflect the danger posed when gang-affiliated suspects fire at police and the community. On 24 May 2021, Samuel Ortiz Rodriguez was fatally shot in Aurora after 3 alleged gang members went looking for rival gang members. Prosecutors say Ponce pointed out Ortiz Rodriguez and Bello then fired the revolver that deleted him. A Kane County jury convicted Cesar Ponce of first-degree deletion in March 2023, and in late May 2023, a judge sentenced him to 40 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. His bond was revoked after the verdict, and he remained in custody. Fidel Bello later pleaded guilty to first-degree deletion and faces a lengthy prison term as well. Prosecutors said Bello personally fired the weapon, exposing him to additional sentencing enhancement. Authorities described the deletion as a targeted, gang-motivated attack in which an innocent man was mistakenly identified as a rival, and Kane County prosecutors credited cooperating witnesses and thorough investigative work in securing convictions. A 2-year, multi-agency probe called Operation Fallen Angel targeted the Maniac Latin disciples and culminated in criminal charges against a dozen people for state and federal narcotics offenses tied to distribution in Aurora and nearby communities. According to the FBI and local partners, the investigation used undercover buys and court-authorized phone surveillance, led to arrests on September 26th and 27th and charged 12 suspects, including Timothy Hill, Marcus Russell, and Vernon Turner, who face federal distribution and conspiracy counts. Armando Gallardo, was convicted in December 2013 for 2 counts of attempted first-degree deletion and multiple weapons offenses stemming from a pair of gang-related shootings in Aurora in September 2011. Prosecutors say that on Sept 6, 2011, Gallardo, then a front-seat passenger, climbed into the back seat of a car and fired 3 shots from a .40 caliber semi-automatic at a rival outside a home. Days later, on September 12th, officers chased the same vehicle, during which Gallardo allegedly tossed a loaded handgun. Forensic testing later matched that gun to both shootings. A judge found Gallardo personally discharged the weapon, exposing him to a mandatory 20-year enhancement, and the court ultimately imposed a 30-year prison term. Gallardo remained in custody after his conviction, with bond revoked. His convictions and sentence were later upheld on appeal. Alex Xavier Fuentes pleaded guilty on 2 March 2021 and was sentenced to 30 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections after admitting to multiple gun offenses stemming from a series of incidents in Aurora, including armed violence, possession of a weapon by a felon, and unlawful use of a weapon by a gang member. Prosecutors say the charges arise after an 30th August 2018 incident in which Fuentes allegedly approached a vehicle he believed was occupied by a rival gang member and fired multiple shots. The next day, he was arrested and found in possession of a loaded semi-automatic handgun that he was prohibited from carrying because of a January 2018 felony conviction. Investigators also tied Fuentes to a 19 September 2016 traffic stop incident in which a suspect tossed a loaded semi-automatic handgun while fleeing. In May 2019, Aurora police later confirmed by DNA testing that Fuentes was the person who threw that gun.
Facing attempted charges for an alleged ambush in suburban Addison. Prosecutors say it happened in broad daylight on Thursday. Brandon Pichardo, Damian Gonzalez, Arubel Martinez, and Efren Garcia all appeared in court today. Police say they approached 2 people who were parked in a driveway and they opened fire. One of the victims was shot 11 times. The other was hit twice. Both victims were taken to the hospital in serious injuries.
4 men from Cook County were charged after a daytime shooting in Addison left 2 people seriously wounded. The charges were announced by Robert B. Berlin following an investigation by the Addison Police Department. Authorities say they were each charged with 2 counts of attempted deletion and 2 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm, both Class X felonies. Prosecutors allege the 4 suspects arrived in a Nissan Altima and approached a Jeep SUV parked in a driveway on the 500 block of South Wisconsin Avenue. According to investigators, Gonzalez allegedly opened fire on the victims, striking one victim twice and the other 11 times before the group fled the scene. Police responded around to reports of shots fired and found the 2 victims inside the Jeep suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Officers provided first aid before both victims were transported to a hospital for treatment. Pichardo, Gonzalez, and Martinez were arrested the same day, while Garcia was taken into custody the following day.
The death of a West Chicago man has now been ruled a homicide. Alexander Nicholas's body was found in the 600 block of East Forest Avenue back on Friday. Investigators say an autopsy revealed someone killed a 26-year-old.
3 men were charged in connection with the fatal shooting of 26-year-old Alexander Nicholas, whose body was discovered in the 600 block of East Forest Avenue in West Chicago, Illinois. According to investigators, a 911 caller reported finding Nicholas lying face up on the ground around, suffering from a gunshot wound to the back of his head. First responders arrived at the scene, but Nicholas was pronounced dead shortly afterward. An autopsy conducted by the DuPage County Coroner's Office ruled the death a deletion. Authorities later announced that the demise was believed to be connected to a gang-related dispute, and detectives from the West Chicago Police Department and DuPage County authorities identified 3 suspects who were subsequently charged with murder.
Jason Brown, a.k.a. Abdul Jameh, gang leader, drug dealer, but the feds say he was working the streets for ISIS.
And tonight, CBS 2's Tara Molina shows us the feds' case against the accused homegrown terrorist.
Jason Brown, $500 cash in hand, finger in the air, smiling as he says, Allah knows. The image is from August 16th of this year,
when, according to this federal complaint, Brown planned to, quote, knowingly provide material support and resources to a foreign terrorist organization. Brown's support? Money, at least 3 times, to who he believed was an ISIS militant.
Jason Brown is the leader of the AHK street gang. Prosecutors say this is him giving $500 to a man he thought would wire the money to an ISIS soldier. That man was really an informant for the feds. Federal agents could be seen going in and out of Brown's Lombard home yesterday. According to court documents, Brown required all members of his gang to convert to Islam. He actively recruited and radicalized members to support ISIS.
Jason Brown, also known as Abdul Jaim, is the leader of the AHK, a House of Knowledge, street gang based in the Chicago suburb of Bellwood. The gang comprises former members of other gangs, including the Black Pea Stones, Gangster Disciples, and Four Corner Hustlers. Brown, 37 years old and residing in Lombard, Illinois, was arrested in November 2019 for attempting to provide material support to ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq, and Al-Shem. He provided $500 in cash on 3 separate occasions to an individual he believed was supporting ISIS, who was actually an undercover law enforcement officer. In addition to his charges related to terrorism, Brown and other AHK members were involved in drug trafficking activities, distributing in the Chicago area. The AHK gang operated drug markets in Chicago's North Lawndale and Humboldt Park neighborhoods, and they often boasted about their activities on social media. Brown faces up to 20 years in prison for the material support charge, while other gang members face various sentences for drug-related offenses.
9 reputed gang members from the suburbs of Addison and Bloomingdale, Illinois, were charged with a series of weapons and drug offenses following a coordinated law enforcement operation in DuPage County. Authorities said the suspects were believed to be members of the La Raza Street gang and were arrested during raids carried out. Police arrested 8 adults and 1 juvenile on February 28 during the operation. Several defendants were charged with delivery of controlled substances such as cocaine, while others face charges including unlawful possession of firearms by a gang member, possession of body armor, criminal damage to property, and fleeing police. Investigators also alleged that some suspects were involved in gang-related drug distribution activity in the west suburban area. In September 2013, DuPage County Sheriff's deputies arrested 4 alleged gang members after responding to reports of a violent fight near the tennis courts at an apartment complex in unincorporated Lombard, Illinois. Authorities said deputies were called to the scene after witnesses reported a large altercation involving several individuals. When officers arrived, they found that a group confrontation had taken place involving suspected gang members. Following the investigation, several suspects of Lombard were arrested and each charged with felony mob action, a Class 4 felony under Illinois law that applies when 2 or more people act together to commit violence. Prosecutors alleged the suspects participated in a group attack during the incident. Authorities said the victim involved in the altercation was also identified as a known gang member. Paramedics treated the individual at the scene for injuries, but the victim did not require hospitalization and was released shortly afterward. 2 Chicago men will remain in custody after prosecutors say they robbed a gas station at gunpoint in Addison and led police on a dangerous high-speed chase. According to DuPage County State's Attorney Robert Berlin, Willie Carter of Auburn Gresham and Anton Stevens of North Lawndale have been charged with 2 counts of armed robbery with a firearm and 1 count of unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. Stevens also faces an additional charge of aggravated fleeing and eluding a police officer. Authorities allege the pair entered an Addison gas station armed with a handgun, threatened employees, and stole cash before fleeing the scene in a vehicle. Police later located the suspect vehicle and attempted a traffic stop, but investigators say the driver sped away, triggering a high-speed pursuit through the area. The chase ended when officers stopped the vehicle and arrested both suspects. Police also recovered a firearm believed to be connected to the robbery. On October 19, 2011, 19-year-old Alejandro Roman was sentenced to 14 years in prison for his role in a violent 2009 home invasion and shooting in unincorporated Glen Ellen. Prosecutors said Roman was one of 3 masked intruders who broke into a home on the 800 block of Bush Road shortly on October 23, 2009, believing they would find a large amount of drugs and cash inside. After the intruders bound 2 victims with duct tape on the first floor, Roman began searching the house for narcotics. But when he tried to force his way into an upstairs bedroom, a homeowner inside fired through the door and struck Roman. Prosecutors said that was when James Krell, described as the trigger man, opened fire downstairs, shooting a 20-year-old woman in the face just below the eye and a 23-year-old man 4 times in the face and arm. Both victims survived. Roman was later arrested after seeking treatment at a hospital and eventually led investigators to Krell, while a 3rd suspect was identified but had not been charged at the time. Roman later pleaded guilty to 1 count of home invasion, while Krell separately received 29 years in prison after pleading guilty to attempted deletion and home invasion. The judge said Roman's younger age and the fact that he was not the shooter were considered, but the seriousness of the home invasion still warranted a lengthy prison sentence. A Chicago man described by authorities as a known gang member was arrested following an undercover narcotics investigation conducted by the DuPage County Sheriff's Office. Investigators said Errol Abdui, of the 3900 block of Belmont Avenue in Chicago, was taken into custody after detectives carried out a series of controlled drug purchases in which he allegedly sold X pills to undercover officers. According to police, the investigation involved multiple transactions that allowed detectives to gather evidence before making the arrest. Abdui was subsequently charged with manufacture and delivery of a controlled substance. 6 people, including 3 adults and 3 juveniles, were charged in connection with a gang-related shooting and stabbing that occurred early Monday morning in West Chicago, Illinois, according to the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office. Police were called to the 100 block of Wycliffe Drive around after a resident reported that a rock had been thrown through a window of a home. The caller also reported hearing gunshots and witnessing a stabbing during the confrontation. Investigators believe the violence stemmed from an ongoing gang dispute, where a group allegedly approached the residents and escalated the situation into a violent altercation. During the incident, a victim was shot and another person was stabbed, though both survived their injuries. Detectives later identified the suspects through witness statements and evidence gathered at the scene. A Glendale Heights man was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the fatal shooting of a rival gang member in a case that began when he was still a teenager. Jesse Garza pleaded guilty to second-degree deletion in DuPage County Court for the demise of 20-year-old Miguel Reynoso. According to prosecutors, the shooting occurred on June 7, 2018, when Addison police officers responded to Green Oaks Park after reports of gunfire. Around the same time, Glendale Heights police discovered an unresponsive man lying in a driveway near Glen Oaks Hospital. The victim was later identified as Reynoso, who authorities said was a member of a rival gang to Garza. Investigators determined that Reynoso had been shot multiple times, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Detectives later linked Garza to the shooting through witness statements and evidence gathered during the investigation, because Garza was 17 years old at the time of the crime. The case involved complex legal proceedings before he ultimately pleaded guilty to the reduced charge of second-degree deletion. Prosecutors described.
Today, a Chicago man with Down syndrome is expected to enter pleas in connection with 2. Police say 22-year-old Nicholas Samudio was shot a man in North Lawndale in February, 10 days after the driver on Interstate 55. 25-year-old Humberto Marin Garcia was traveling with his pregnant wife and their 2 young children when their car was hit by gunfire on the Stevenson near Bridgeport. His wife says she was able to stop the car and then realized her husband was no longer breathing. Samudio was arrested after the second shooting along with another man.
A notorious Chicago street gang, the Latin Kings, is gaining attention for an unusual twist in a recent case. Authorities report that one of the gang's most feared hitmen, Nicholas Smush Samudio, has Down syndrome. Zamudio now faces charges for 2 deletions committed within a span of 10 days. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, Zamudio was indicted on felony deletion charges for the February 16 road rage deletion of Humberto Marin Garcia and the February 26 slaying of Tomas Villa. After the second deletion, Zamudio was apprehended following a high-speed chase in a stolen vehicle. The second deletion, which police describe as bold and brazen, may have been a tragic case of mistaken identity. Detectives believe Zamudio confused Villa's baseball cap with one worn by a rival gang member. Shell casings from the scene of Villa's demise were later matched to a .380 caliber handgun that officers suspect Zamudio discarded during the chase. Zamudio's public defender has stated that the accused suffers from Down syndrome, a genetic disorder, and was previously employed in jobs such as furniture moving and demolition. Despite his diagnosis, Zamudio has been a known figure to law enforcement, with 17 prior arrests since turning 18, including suspicions of involvement in a 2020 gang deletion in Chicago's McKinley Park neighborhood, though charges were never filed in that case. In the Marin Garcia slaying, Zamudio allegedly shot the victim during a road rage incident, with the deletion taking place in front of Marin Garcia's pregnant wife. Authorities say Zamudio remains a suspect in multiple other gang-related deletions, and he is currently being held without bail. This case presents a complex mix of tragedy, shock, and moral ambiguity. On one hand, it's deeply unsettling to think that a young man with Down syndrome, someone typically associated with vulnerability and innocence, could become involved in such violent and cold-blooded crimes. Nicholas Smush Zamudio's alleged actions are serious, and if proven guilty, they showed the brutal reality of gang life, where even individuals with disabilities can be drawn in or manipulated into participating in horrific acts. From a broader social perspective, it raises questions about how much responsibility Zamudio can bear for his actions. People with Down syndrome can have cognitive impairments, and that makes it crucial to assess his ability to understand the consequences of his behavior. Was he exploited by gang leaders who took advantage of his condition? Or was he fully aware of his actions and driven by the same motivations that fuel gang violence across cities like Chicago? The public may find it hard to reconcile these questions, especially when so many lives have been lost or destroyed in this cycle of violence. It also highlights a failure of social safety nets and the justice system. Zamudio had been arrested 17 times since turning 18, yet he was still on the streets, involved in even more violence. How does someone with such a history, especially someone with Down syndrome, fall so deeply into gang life without intervention? This case points to larger systemic issues: inadequate mental health care, the lure of gangs preying on vulnerable individuals, and a justice system that allows people to slip through the cracks. On a human level, it's devastating for the victims' families, especially Humberto Marin Garcia's, who witnessed the murder during a road rage incident, which underscores the random and senseless nature of street violence. Tomas Villa's, likely a case of mistaken identity, adds another tragic layer to the story. In the end, this case blends sympathy, outrage, and confusion. Sympathy for Zamudio if he was indeed exploited by those around him, outrage over the loss of innocent lives, and confusion over how someone with such a disorder could become so enmeshed in a life of crime.
Darnell, aka Murda, and the Black Disciples, 2020 RICO case. In 2020, federal authorities announced that 23 individuals had been arrested in a crackdown on drug and weapons trafficking in Chicago's Englewood neighborhood, including a prominent leader of the Black Disciples street gang named Darnell Murder McMiller. The arrests were part of a larger effort to combat gang-related violence in the city.
Alleged leader of the Black Disciples gang is among nearly 24 people charged in a federal takedown.
Also recovered a cache of weapons, drugs, and money.
Taking down very high-ranking members of the Black Disciples street gang, including, as you mentioned, the leader of that gang. That man is Darnell McMiller. Here is a photo of him. He is known, police say, as Murder. CPD, along with its federal partners, worked on this case for several years with help from informants, and yesterday made these arrests.
Huge drug and gun investigation in Chicago. 23 people there face federal charges, including Darnell McMiller, believed to be the leader of the Black Disciples street gang.
It's a lot who claim BD that there's so much fair shit going on, the real ain't gonna get away up, but a lot of you is not BD. We ain't see your ass in 06, 2010, 07, you know what I'm saying? A lot of you ain't BD. A lot of you but I ain't gonna expose you, man. Your mama and them probably don't want you. You know what I'm saying? That's why you on the streets, man, trying to claim something that you know can take care of your ass, man.
And a lot of you BD for protection, really, though. You niggas out here claiming this shit, but ain't on shit.
Can't take care.
According to the charges, McMiller, a Chicago resident, currently holds the position of leader within the Black Disciples, a national street gang established in the city during the 1960s. Additionally, the charges include Clarence January, who is said to lead the gang's Dog Pound faction, and Charles Knight, an alleged high-ranking member of the Gangster Disciples accused of supplying narcotics to McMiller's crew. McMiller's apprehension occurred approximately 1 year following his release from federal prison on a distinct narcotics conspiracy charge. Public records indicate that he was sentenced to 8 years of incarceration in 2014, and he was released in the middle of 2019. Shortly after his release, he was recorded on FBI wiretaps seeking to arrange fresh drug pipelines for the gang, as stated in the charges. According to the criminal complaint revealed after McMiller's detention, in a recorded conversation from September 2019, he told an undercover FBI informant that he contemplated instituting the birthday of ex-Black Disciples leader Jerome "Shorty" Freeman as a holiday for the gang everywhere. The charges claim that McMiller informed the FBI informant that although David Barksdale, who co-founded the original Black Gangster Disciples Nation alongside Larry Hoover, is still regarded as the King of Kings, McMiller had a more personal relationship with Jerome "Shorty" Freeman. McMiller purportedly said, "We know Shorty personally." As per the prosecution, McMiller was also recorded discussing his responsibilities as a leader of the gang in relation to settling disputes. In one recording, when the informant inquired about a shooting that had happened the previous night, McMiller purportedly responded, "They straightened that out," as stated in the complaint. McMiller referred to the individuals responsible for the shooting, saying, "Bro and Nam from the 100s came and did that." He was alluding to the region where his enforcers reside, which is situated within Black Disciples territory, according to the complaint. Law enforcement officials spoke at a press conference outside Chicago Police's Englewood District Station regarding the operation, which involved the confiscation of various substances, including heroin blended with potent painkiller fentanyl, cocaine, ecstasy pills, around $50,000 in cash, and 24 guns. The investigation also resulted in the apprehension of several other individuals, including John Ector, the proprietor of Southside nightclub V75, who was supposedly responsible for handling the gang's finances. Ector, a 47-year-old Chicago resident, has been charged with bank fraud, according to court documents. Shango Collier, a part owner of the well-known chicken eatery Wings Around the World situated on West 61st Street, was apprehended as well. Collier, a 48-year-old resident of Riverdale, has been charged with trafficking fentanyl and other narcotics. Months later, a judge dismissed the case against him due to lack of evidence. In addition, the 2-year investigation led to numerous purported gang members being accused of illegal firearms trafficking. The U.S. Attorney's Office has stated that various other individuals, who had prior convictions for felony offenses, have been charged with possessing firearms illegally. The charges involve providing rifles and a shotgun to Black Disciples members, as per the U.S. Attorney's Office. The crackdown on gang-related violence in Chicago continues, and law enforcement officials remain committed to dismantling the
bounty was put on the head of the commander of the Border Patrol out here, Chief Gregory Bovino. Federal prosecutors, I should say, released yesterday that they had arrested one suspect. They described him as a ranking member of the Latin King street gang. His name is Juan Espinoza Martinez, alleging that he solicited the of Bovino. Part of the evidence, a Snapchat message offering $2,000 for information about Bovino, $10,000 to, quote, take him down. Here's Chief Bovino last night.
It's a war zone out there. Secretary No mentioned a bounty on the heads of federal agents, that $2,000 to kidnap, $10,000 to kill senior Border Patrol officials and senior ICE officials here in Chicago. That's something out of a third world country. Is this America? So we do need to get to the bottom of that, and I do believe that we'll get some more clarity on what happened there with the response.
A Snapchat message. a photo of a federal law enforcement chief name, face, everything, and a price on his head. $2,000 if you find out where he is. $10,000 if you delete him. That's what showed up on Snapchat in October 2025, posted by a ranking member of one of the most notorious street gangs in America, targeting a sitting U.S. Border Patrol chief by name. Not in a cartel safe house, not in a coded letter, on Snapchat, with a photo attached. This isn't a rumor. This isn't a street beef. This is a federal deletion for hire case. And it went down right here. Gregory Bovino is no low-level agent. He's a U.S. Border Patrol commander at large, one of the senior-most law enforcement officials in the entire customs. Operation Midway Blitz was a sweeping immigration enforcement operation targeting Chicago. CBP agents coordinated raids, arrests. It was aggressive. It was visible. If you're a street gang with deep roots in the immigrant community and the immigration enforcement is suddenly your front porch problem, Chief Gregory Bovino becomes enemy number one. That's the backdrop. That's why his face ended up on a Snapchat bounty post.
Gang member in Chicago is now accused of putting a bounty out for Border Patrol Chief Gregory Bovino. Juan Espinoza Martinez is charged with murder for hire. The Department of Homeland Security says an informant sent them an image from Snapchat where Martinez allegedly offered $10,000.
Here's what the messages said. $2,000. For information, specifically, cuando lo agarren. That's Spanish. It means when they catch him, as in catch Bovino. Find out where he is. Be there when it happens. $2,000 for that. $10,000 for taking him down. That's the word used. If you take him down, there's no ambiguity there. That's a murder bounty on a federal law enforcement official. The messages were posted via Snapchat handle Monkeys and signed with the name Juan. Attached to the messages was an actual photograph of Chief Bovino. Think about that for a second. This wasn't a vague threat. This wasn't someone blowing off steam in a group chat. This was a targeted, specific, dollar amount bounty on a named federal officer, with his picture, on a public social platform. Signed with Latin Kings references the letters LK embedded in the messages.
Meantime, a gangland hit was put out on Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino. Federal prosecutors say Juan Espinoza Martinez, who they describe as a ranking member of the Latin King street gang, solicited of Bovino. They presented Snapchat messages reading $2,000 for info on Bovino, $10,000 to take him down, emojis, and a notation LK for Latin Kings on him.
There's going to be more incidents just like this because it's a war zone out there. Secretary No mentioned a bounty on the heads of federal agents. That's something out of a third world country.
When we were in the courtroom earlier today, defendant Juan Espinoza Martinez, he entered the court in a suit and tie, taking the seat closest to Judge Lefkoe at a table with his two attorneys. Espinoza Martinez attentive through this long day. He is now accused of soliciting a hit on Greg Bovino back in October. At the time of the arrest, investigators released a key piece of their evidence, Snapchat messages that they say indicate Espinoza Martinez was offering a $2,000 reward for information on Bovino and $10,000 for his murder, money he was allegedly going to give on behalf of the Latin Kings. Today's questioning of jurors revolved around some pretty standard issues, the jurors' abilities to remain impartial and whether jurors could serve because of job or caretaker responsibilities.
Juan Espinoza Martinez, 37 years old, Mexican national, here for approximately 30 years, basically his whole adult life, most of his childhood. He knows Chicago. He knows the streets. Federal prosecutors identified him as a ranking member of the Latin Kings, not a foot soldier, not a prospect. A ranking member, someone with standing in the organization, someone whose orders carry weight. The Latin Kings aren't new. They're one of the oldest, most structured street gangs in the United States, founded in Chicago, with chapters spread across the country. They have hierarchy, they have codes, and they have history of violence that spans decades. His defense attorney, Jonathan Betty, pushed back hard, said his client was a union member, coached kids' sports teams, father of 3 children, no prior criminal record, total innocence. The picture painted was of a family man woven into Chicago's working-class fabric. But federal prosecutors painted a very different picture. The Snapchat account was traced back to an Apple iPhone 16. The messages, the photo, the gang references, all of it documented, all of it tied to one man.
The Homeland Security Department warned about the rise of bounties targeting federal agents. The cartel-backed bounties cost up to $50,000 for assassinating high-ranking officials. Here is Chief Bovino in focus yesterday.
Since those bounties were put out, we've had to take different measures to keep our agents safe, our ICE officers safe, and our allied law enforcement agents safe as they go into the field. And something else, Harris, that we're seeing is the lethality of the assaults against officers and agents. That lethality is increasing, and I think it's because of the bounties and that crazy rhetoric by the out-of-control governor and mayor.
2025. Someone talked. A confidential informant reached out to law enforcement and reported the hit. Told them there was a bounty out on Chief Bovino. Told them screenshots existed. ICE's Homeland Security Investigations HSI Chicago moved immediately. They received the Snapchat screenshots. They saw the messages. They saw the photo. They started running it down. 3 days. That's how long it took. On October 6, 2025, federal agents closed in on Burr Ridge, Illinois, a suburb just southwest of Chicago. One Espinoza Martinez was taken into custody without incident. 3 days from tip to cuffs. ICE, HSI, and federal law enforcement partners.
Motion filed yesterday, Martinez's attorney is asking for the government to disclose the single source of information behind the complaint. His attorney says Martinez has no gang affiliation or criminal history and is innocent.
The complaint calling him a high-ranking gang member who goes by the name Monkey. Martinez, they say, used the social media app Snapchat to put out a bounty, alleging these messages came from Martinez, showing Bovino's picture and offering $2,000 for information on his location. Investigators say he hatched the plan after a federal agent shot a 31-year-old woman during another incident on Saturday in Brighton Park. Court records allege Martinez directed fellow gang members to arm themselves and patrol near 26th and Drake to protect gang territory.
The federal charge is serious. Soliciting the deletion of a senior law enforcement official under federal law, using interstate commerce, and yes, Snapchat on a cell phone counts as interstate commerce, with the intent that a murder be committed. That's the statute. That's what he's facing. This is not a state charge. This is the Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois. These are the people who've prosecuted mob bosses, cartel leaders, and organized crime figures for decades. This case is in their hands now. The grand jury moved quickly. Espinoza Martinez was indicted and arraigned on the same day he was arrested, October 6, 2025. He's been in federal custody since. No bail, no release, sitting in a federal holding facility while this case played out. His attorney entered a not guilty plea. He maintained he didn't do it, that he has no gang ties, that this is all a mistake. Then a jury
the government
agreed.
painted the 37-year-old union carpenter as a ranking member of the street gang. That allegation was later dropped. In fact, Espinoza Martinez does not have a criminal record. He is a Mexican national who was brought into the United States as a young child. Defense attorney Dina Singer saying this in closing: the government wants you to convict based on Snapchat messages sent to a physically challenged friend and his own brother. That's it. That's their entire case. No money exchanged hands, no weapon, just
Espinoza
word.
Martinez showed no emotion in the moments immediately after he learned his fate. Looking down as the judge read the jury's verdict, he hugged his attorney afterward and mouthed 2 words to the jury: "Thank you." Prosecutors argued that the messages he sent to a friend and to his own brother were an attempt at murder for hire, messages that indicated the Latin Kings were offering money for Greg Bovino's. But defense attorneys say their client was messaging friends about neighborhood gossip, telling jurors to consider what they saw inside the courtroom as well. The key witness for the prosecution, the friend who received the messages, turned out to also be a longtime federal informant. And he walked to the witness stand with obvious health and mobility issues, even asking for help getting out of the witness chair at the end. The defense argued this is not the kind of person someone would ask to carry out a hit on a government official.
Story takes a turn nobody expected. After months in federal custody, no bail, no release, Juan Espinoza Martinez went to trial, and the jury came back with a not guilty verdict. Not guilty on the federal murder solicitation charge. Let that sink in. The DOJ, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois, federal prosecutors with all the resources in the world, all the screenshots, all the phone data, all the gang intelligence, and the jury said, not enough. His defense attorney Jonathan Betty had been saying it from day one. Wrong man. No criminal record. Family member, union worker, little league coach. And apparently, when it came down to it, the government couldn't close the gap between those Snapchat messages and proof beyond a reasonable doubt that his client sent them. The Snapchat account, the iPhone 16, the LK references, the photo of Bovino. The jury heard all of it and still said not guilty. That doesn't mean the messages weren't real. Someone posted that bounty. Someone put Chief Bovino's face on a 10,000 hit list on Snapchat. That happened. Federal investigators believe they found the right guy. But in an American courtroom, believing it and proving it are two very different things. The Latin Kings have been around since the 1950s. They've seen federal prosecutions before, RICO cases, decades of law enforcement pressure, and they're still here, still operating, still violent. This case of Snapchat bounty on a sitting Border Patrol chief was brazen in a way that's almost without precedent. And it happened in Chicago, a city already under a microscope for gang violence, immigration enforcement, and political tension. A not guilty verdict doesn't close this chapter. It just means one man went home. The streets of Chicago remember everything. Just to be clear on what was at stake, soliciting deletion of a senior federal law enforcement official is a federal offense that carries decades in prison. Federal sentencing is no joke, no parole, mandatory minimums, and a federal prosecutor's office that does not negotiate weakness. Juan Espinoza Martinez went from posting a Snapchat to sitting in federal custody awaiting trial on a deletion for hire charge. At 37 years old, the jury said not guilty. He walked free. Coming up next on All Scoops Media, we've got another case that you are not going to want to miss. We're going deep on it. Stay right here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. We put out content like this constantly. Real cases, real names, real consequences. You don't want to sleep on it.
It was an extensive trial that took 10 weeks and nearly 100 witnesses. It was also the county's first test of a tool designed to uproot street gangs. Tonight, Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox stood in the Layton Criminal Court building praising prosecutors' work after a jury handed down a guilty verdict for 6 Black Souls gang leaders, 5 of them pictured here. The 6 men were found guilty of drug and racketeering conspiracy.
For over a decade, the Black Souls terrorized a West Side neighborhood through violent crimes to protect their illegal drug trade, including committing an execution in broad daylight of a neighborhood man who was brave enough to report them.
6 leaders of the Black Soul Street Gang were convicted on racketeering and drug charges, facing potential life sentences after a complex trial, according to the Chicago Sun-Times. This verdict followed a chaotic moment during jury deliberations when 5 jurors were dismissed, forcing a restart of deliberations. Judge Michael B. McHale made the decision after a juror overheard racist comments. 2 jurors admitted they intended to send a message with their verdict, and another disclosed connections to other street gang members. One juror even fainted in the jury room, prompting the dismissals. Despite the disruptions, the newly formed jury quickly assessed the 9 weeks of testimony that included details of deletions, drug deals, and the gang's violent history. Prosecutors outlined the Black Souls criminal enterprise, which was led by Cornell Dawson. The gang controlled a 6-block area on the near northwest side, particularly thriving from drug sales near the intersection of West Monroe and Pulaski, where they dealt various drugs. 6 Black Soul leaders were the only ones to stand trial among 23 Black Souls members and associates indicted in 2013. The operation was named after the bullets used by Duavin Spears, a Black Souls enforcer, of the demise of a police informant, Claude Snelligan, in 2012. Spears allegedly shot Snelligan outside a cell phone store to protect Black Souls members who were being charged with beating Snelligan after he repeatedly reported their drug activities to police. Dawson had offered Snelligan $3,000 to drop the charges, unaware that Snelligan was cooperating with law enforcement. The trial exposed the gang's rigid hierarchy and brutal enforcement of its rules. One of the deletions described during the trial involved a lower-ranking member who was beaten to his demise for stealing drug money and buried in a shallow grave next to the house where the assault occurred. This crime became known as the Soul in the Hole case. Defense attorneys focused their efforts on discrediting the testimony of former gang members, many of whom had received lenient plea deals in exchange for their cooperation. A key prosecution witness, Alex Williams, was an FBI informant who befriended Dawson while in Cook County Jail. Despite his importance to the case, wearing a wire and helping investigators understand the gang's coded language, defense attorneys highlighted Williams' own criminal activities, including selling drugs while working for the FBI and receiving over $100,000 in benefits, including cash and relocation. The Lake County Sheriff's Office Special Investigations Group arrested members of the street gang known as Satan Disciple into custody. The investigation, which began more than a year ago, targeted the gang for its involvement in drug trafficking and violent acts across Lake County, according to Sheriff's Office spokesperson LT, Christopher Covelli. Undercover operatives from SIG managed to seize 15 firearms, along with ammunition, during the operation. Detectives also successfully intercepted and prevented 2 planned drive-by shootings that had been ordered by gang members. One of these targeted a residence where multiple people were present, which could have led to numerous casualties, Covelli said. This long-term investigation marks a major step in combating gang-related violence and drug activity in the region.
First, Chicago's gang war takes a huge hit. The suspected patriarch of the infamous Gangster Disciples busted. What it means for the violence and drug trade on the streets.
In all, 35 suspected gang members were arrested today. Chicago police and federal agents seized illegal guns as well as heroin and other narcotics. Prosecutors called the 55-year-old leader one of the last, quote, patriarchs of the Gangster Disciples. The group once had thousands of members, used murder and torture to control $100 million in annual drug sales, and even wielded political influence in some parts of town. But 2 decades of federal and local law enforcement have changed all of that.
Prosecutors said the gang faction run by Johnny Herndon, also known as Goo, collected close to $2 million a year. They sold and other narcotics wholesale to allied street gang factions and offered retail sales at 2 open-air drug spots on Jackson and on Kilbourne. Investigators said business was booming because customers from the suburbs and downtown could come and go quickly via the Eisenhower Expressway. After a member of the gang was in June, Herndon's top assistant was overheard apparently plotting to take revenge. Police moved immediately to arrest him, finding him with a semi-automatic Glock 357 and another 357 revolver.
It's about getting the right people off the street at the right place at the right time. And this gang clearly was getting the right people off the street at the right time.
Authorities called the 55-year-old Herndon patriarch of the Gangster Disciples, but his alleged drug money and power paled in comparison to Larry Hoover.
Federal authorities have arrested Johnny Herndon, the alleged leader of a Gangster Disciples faction that operates on the west side of Chicago. Herndon, also known as Goo, is accused of overseeing a drug trafficking organization that has been selling narcotics in the 2-block area surrounding the 4,500 block of West Jackson Boulevard since the early 1990s. Along with 34 other defendants, Herndon has been charged with drug possession and distribution at 2 open-air drug spots in the city. Authorities allege that Herndon used proceeds from drug sales to amass a real estate portfolio of more than 30 properties, mostly multi-unit rentals, valued at over $1.6 million. These properties were acquired over 2 decades, with many purchased outright using drug profits. Herndon's drug territory is considered highly profitable due to its proximity to the Eisenhower Expressway and the high volume of drug customers in the area. According to federal charges, his organization used violence, guns, and threats to control and protect this lucrative drug market. Christopher Harris, who allegedly managed the day-to-day operations of Herndon's drug enterprise, was also arrested. Harris was reportedly involved in 2 separate incidents this year where he was recorded requesting guns, with the second instance occurring on June 7th following the shooting demise of a Gangster Disciples member. Harris was charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm after law enforcement intercepted him before any retaliatory violence could take place. Herndon's organization allegedly controlled 2 primary drug spots, one in the 300 block of South Kilburn Avenue and another in the 4400 block of West Congress Avenue. These drug spots were responsible, generating an estimated $5,400 in daily revenue. Over the course of a typical month, the organization is alleged to have generating around $162,000. Since 1993, Herndon, 55, has reportedly used drug proceeds to purchase 31 properties in Chicago and nearby areas, including Gary, Indiana. The properties were often purchased outright, without mortgages, and many were later rehabilitated. Herndon's rental properties, which include some Section 8 subsidized units, are said to generate over $20,000 a month in rental income. 4 men allegedly committed fatal shootings on Chicago's Northwest Side as part of their efforts to maintain and elevate their ranks within a violent street gang, according to a newly unsealed federal indictment. The federal indictment, returned last month by a grand jury in Chicago, was unsealed on May 9, 2019. According to the indictment, the defendants are members of the Milwaukee King Street Gang. All 4 are currently in law enforcement custody. The indictment describes the Milwaukee Kings as a criminal organization involved in drug trafficking and violent acts, including an assault. Members of the gang allegedly promoted their criminal activities on social media, threatened rival gangs, and took measures to avoid detection by law enforcement. Navarro is accused of the demise of Xavier Soto on April 27, 2017 in Chicago's Cragen neighborhood to advance his status within the gang. He also allegedly attempted the demise of 2 other individuals that same day. Martinez and Lozoya are charged with the December 16, 2016 demise of Crispin Colas, 28, in Chicago's Dunning neighborhood. According to the indictment, this deletion was also carried out to maintain or increase their positions within the gang. Rojas is accused of fatally shooting 19-year-old on September 2, 2015 in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood, similarly to elevate his standing in the gang.
The cases featured in this video highlight the enormous effort required to investigate and prosecute organized gang activity across Illinois. From major cities to growing suburbs, investigators have relied on years of surveillance, forensic evidence, digital communications, confidential informants, and multi-agency partnerships to build complex criminal cases. While these arrests and indictments have disrupted numerous criminal organizations, the challenges posed by gang violence, illegal firearms, and drug trafficking continue to evolve. If you enjoyed this documentary, be sure to like the video, subscribe to All Scoops Media, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into gang indictments, organized crime, prison systems, and true crime stories from across the United States.